Connor Hayes grabbed the small black girl by her collar and slammed her into the lockers so hard the metal screamed. Her books exploded across the marble floor, while 20 phones captured every second. "Welcome to Prescott Charity Case." He leaned in close, his spit hitting her face. "We don't do affirmative action here. Go back to whatever ghetto you crawled out of." Maya Carter didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't beg. She smiled. In exactly 14 days, Connor Hayes would be unconscious on this same floor. His senator father in handcuffs and a conspiracy worth millions would burn to ashes. He just didn't know he'd picked the wrong girl. Before we continue this incredible story, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow Maya's journey to the very end. Drop a comment below telling us which city you're watching from. I'm always amazed to see how far these stories travel. Now let me tell you what really happened at Prescott Academy. Maya Carter had been at Prescott Academy for exactly 72 hours when Connor Hayes decided she needed to learn her place. She had arrived on a Tuesday morning, stepping off a Greyhound bus with 2 suitcases held together by duct tape and a backpack that had belonged to her father before he died. The scholarship letter in her pocket promised full tuition, room and board, and access to the same elite education that had produced 3 presidents, 17 senators, and more Fortune 500 CEOs than any other prep school in America. Her mother had cried at the bus station in Hartford. Gloria Carter worked double shifts at St. Francis Hospital, cleaning up after surgeries and emptying bedpans for patients who never looked her in the eye. She had raised Maya alone for 6 years, ever since Marcus Carter collapsed on a construction site and never woke up. No life insurance, no savings. Just a daughter with perfect grades and a dream that seemed impossible until the scholarship letter arrived. "You call me every Sunday," Gloria had said, gripping Maya's hands with fingers rough from industrial soap. "Every single Sunday you hear me, 'Yes, Mama.' And you don't let those rich kids make you feel small. Your daddy was the proudest man I ever knew. You carry that with you." Maya had carried it. Through the bus ride that lasted 4 hours. Through the taxi that dropped her at Prescott's iron gates. Through the registration process where the woman behind the desk had looked at her scholarship paperwork and said, "Oh, you're the diversity admit. How nice." She carried it now, picking up her scattered books, while Connor Hayes and his crew laughed above her. But what Gloria Carter didn't know, what no one at Prescott Academy could possibly suspect, was that her daughter had stopped being just a scholarship student 3 years ago. The day Sarah Chen tried to kill herself after being driven out of this same school, everything changed. Sarah was Maya's cousin on her father's side, the daughter of her Aunt Catherine, who had married a Chinese immigrant and built a life in the FBI that Marcus Carter had always admired. Sarah had been brilliant, valedictorian material, full scholarship to Prescott Academy, just like Maya. She lasted 2 semesters before the harassment broke her, planted drugs, fabricated cheating accusations, a coordinated campaign of cruelty that ended with her slashing her wrists in a bathtub while her parents were at work. She survived. Barely. The scars on her arms would never fully fade, but the scars on her family ran deeper. Aunt Catherine had used every resource at her disposal to investigate what happened at Prescott. What she found was bigger than teenage bullying. It was a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Connecticut politics, a scheme that had stolen millions from scholarship funds while systematically destroying the students those funds were meant to help. She needed someone on the inside, someone young enough to be believable, someone tough enough to survive, someone with a personal stake in bringing the whole rotten system down. Maya had volunteered before Catherine finished explaining the mission. 3 years of training followed. Combat techniques adapted for her small frame, surveillance protocols, evidence gathering, psychological resilience conditioning that taught her to absorb harassment without breaking to catalog cruelty, without letting it touch her core. She was ready. She had been ready for months. And now, finally, she was inside. Connor spotted her during orientation, standing alone near the back of the auditorium, while legacy students clustered in groups defined by their parents' net worth. His eyes had moved over her with the casual assessment of a predator selecting prey. "Fresh meat," he said to Blake Morrison, his enforcer and closest friend. "Black girl scholarship student. This should be fun." "Think she'll last longer than the last one?" Connor laughed. "Give her a week, 2 tops. They never do." "No." The first 2 days passed without incident, but Maya used every moment strategically. She mapped the campus with the precision of a military reconnaissance specialist. Every building entrance, every security camera angle, every blind spot where harassment could occur without witnesses. She identified the faculty members who looked away when Connor's crew operated, noting their names and positions for later investigation. She found the 3 other scholarship students on campus, each one wearing the haunted expression of prey that had learned to make itself small. There was James, a junior from Bridgeport, whose academic brilliance couldn't protect him from daily humiliation. There was Sophia, a sophomore, whose parents had immigrated from Guatemala and who flinched every time someone walked too close. And there was Deshaun, a senior, who had somehow survived 3 years by making himself invisible, never speaking in class, never eating in the cafeteria, never existing in any space where Connor's crew might notice him. Maya observed them all, and she made a silent promise to each one. On the 3rd day, Connor made his move. Maya was walking to her calculus class, moving through the crowded hallway with the careful awareness that had become second nature during her training. She felt the hand close around her backpack strap before she saw who it belonged to. She was yanked backward with enough force to make her stumble, her books tumbling from her arms. "Hey, scholarship girl." Connor's voice dripped with contempt. "I've been wanting to talk to you." Maya turned slowly, keeping her movements non-threatening while her mind cataloged everything. 4 potential witnesses, 2 security cameras with partial coverage, Connor's body language suggesting intimidation rather than immediate violence. "My name is Maya," she said quietly. "Maya Carter." "Did I ask?" Connor stepped closer, using his 6'2" frame to tower over her 5'3". "I don't care what your name is. Around here, you're whatever I decide to call you. And right now, I'm deciding you need to learn how things work at Prescott." "And how do things work?" Connor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Simple. You stay out of our way. You keep your head down. You don't talk to anyone who matters. You sit in the back of every classroom and pray nobody notices you exist. Do that, and maybe, just maybe, you get to stay long enough to put this school on your college applications. And if I don't..." The smile disappeared. "Then you'll wish you had. Ask Sarah Chen how well it worked out for her when she didn't listen." Maya's heart stuttered at her cousin's name, but her face remained perfectly neutral. "Who's Sarah Chen?" "Nobody important. Not anymore." Connor leaned in close, his breath hot against her face. That's the point. She thought she was special. Thought her grades and her scholarships meant she belonged here. She was wrong. And when she figured that out, she didn't handle it well. He made a slashing motion across his wrist. Very messy. Very sad. But that's what happens when people don't accept their place. The rage that surged through Maya was volcanic, but she had been trained for this moment. She let the anger flow through her without allowing it to show on her face. "I understand," she said quietly. "You've made yourself very clear." "Good." Connor stepped back, satisfied with what he interpreted as submission. "Welcome to Prescott Scholarship, girl. Try not to bleed on our nice floors." He walked away, laughing, his crew trailing behind him like hyenas following a lion. Maya bent down to pick up her scattered books, using the moment to compose herself. Her hands were trembling slightly, and she forced them to steady through an act of pure will. He had mentioned Sarah. He had joked about her suicide attempt. He had made it clear that what happened to her cousin wasn't an accident or an unintended consequence. It was policy. The mission had just become personal in a way that even Catherine Chen hadn't anticipated. That night, Maya sat alone in her dorm room, composing a report on a laptop that looked like standard student equipment, but contained encryption software used by intelligence agencies. Day 3. Initial contact with primary target established. Subject Hayes explicitly referenced previous victim Sarah Chen in threatening context. Suggests awareness of systematic harassment protocols and their intended outcomes. Personal involvement confirmed. Recommend accelerated evidence gathering. She paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then she added, "He joked about her scars. He laughed about what they did to her. I need you to know that when this is over, I want to be there when they put the handcuffs on him. I've earned that." The response came within minutes. Acknowledged. Your request is noted. Maintain operational discipline. The mission comes first. We'll make sure you get what you need when the time comes. Maya deleted both messages and closed her laptop. Through her window, she could see the perfectly manicured grounds of Prescott Academy stretching toward the distant lights of the main building. Somewhere in those elegant halls, Connor Hayes was probably laughing with his friends, secure in his power, confident in his invulnerability. He had no idea what was coming. The harassment began in earnest the next morning. Maya opened her locker at 7:45 a.m. to find every book she owned soaked in a substance that combined the smell of rotting fish with something chemical and burning. The odor was overwhelming, spreading through the hallway and making nearby students gag and cover their noses. "Problem scholarship girl." Madison Stewart appeared beside her phone, already recording. "I guess standards are different where you people come from. Maybe you're used to that smell in your neighborhood." The racial implication was impossible to miss. Maya noted it, cataloged it for later use, and kept her face completely expressionless. "I'll need to get replacement books from the library," she said calmly. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention." Madison's perfectly lipsticked mouth fell open slightly. The script in her head called for tears at this point, or anger, or some reaction she could mock and share with her followers. This complete non-response was not in her playbook. "Whatever ghetto," Madison muttered, stalking away to post her video with a caption that would make her meaning unmistakable. Maya photographed the damage from multiple angles, noting the chemical composition of the substance and preserving evidence that would later prove the harassment was coordinated, rather than spontaneous. She filed a report with the front office, watching Mrs. Patterson's face cycle through discomfort and dismissal. "I'll make sure this gets to the appropriate administrators," the secretary said, already sliding the report toward a stack of papers that would never be read. "I'm sure you will," Maya replied. "I've also sent a copy to my email for my records, and my mother's email. She's very interested in how Prescott handles these situations." Something flickered in Mrs. Patterson's eyes. Not concern exactly, but a recognition that this particular scholarship student might be more trouble than expected. The next incident came during lunch. Maya had chosen a corner table with clear sightlines to all exits, her back against the wall, in a position that would have been recognized by any trained operative as tactically optimal. She was reviewing her notes, appearing to study while actually documenting everything she observed about the social dynamics of the cafeteria. The wealthy students clustered near the windows, their tables marked by designer bags, and the casual confidence of inherited privilege. The merely affluent occupied the middle ground, close enough to the elite to hope for inclusion, but far enough to know their place. The scholarship students, those few who remained, ate quickly in corners and tried not to attract attention. James sat 3 tables away, hunched over a book that he wasn't really reading. Sophia had positioned herself near the kitchen entrance, ready to flee at the first sign of trouble. Deshaun was nowhere to be seen, probably eating in some hidden corner of the campus where he couldn't be found. Maya was cataloging their positions when a shadow fell across her tray. "Mind if I sit?" The voice belonged to Derek Chen, Asian-American, handsome in a calculated way, wearing his intelligence like a weapon. He was the technical specialist in Connor's inner circle, the one who handled the digital aspects of their harassment campaigns. "It's a free country," Maya said without looking up. "At least that's what I've heard." Derek sat down, setting his tray across from her with a deliberate casualness that didn't match the sharp assessment in his eyes. "You're interesting. You know that most scholarship students are crying by now, running to teachers, calling home, begging for a bus ticket out." My mother works double shifts at a hospital. Maya continued writing in her notebook. She doesn't have time for phone calls about high school drama, and she definitely doesn't have money for bus tickets I don't need. Tough lady. You take after her. Now Maya looked up, meeting Derek's eyes with an expression that gave nothing away. What do you really want, Derek? Because I don't think you came over here to compliment my mother. Something shifted in his face. Respect, maybe, or the recognition that his usual manipulation techniques weren't going to work. Fair enough, I'll be direct. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You're not like the others. You don't react the way you're supposed to. You don't beg or cry or crumble. It's like you're watching us, analyzing, waiting for something. That makes me curious. And when I'm curious, I dig. Did you find anything interesting? That's the thing. Derek's eyes narrowed. I found nothing. And I'm very good at finding things. Your digital footprint before junior year basically doesn't exist. No social media, no photos, no online presence at all. It's like you materialized out of thin air 2 years ago with perfect grades and a scholarship application. Maya's heart rate increased slightly, but her training held. She'd known this moment might come, and she'd prepared for it. Some people aren't addicted to posting their lives online, she said. My mother thinks social media is a waste of time. She thinks a lot of things are a waste of time, actually. Probably because she spends her days cleaning up after people who had time to waste. That's a good answer. Derek nodded slowly. Very believable. But I'm going to keep digging, Maya Carter. Because I've got a feeling there's more to you than a scholarship application and a chip on your shoulder. He stood and walked away, leaving Maya alone with the uncomfortable realization that she might have underestimated the technical capabilities of Connor's crew. That evening, she sent an encrypted report. Subject Chen displays advanced investigative instincts. Has noted inconsistencies in cover identity. Recommend enhanced operational security and contingency preparations. The response was immediate. Acknowledged. Background reinforcement in progress. Additional documentation being seeded into recoverable databases. Chen's investigation will find what we want him to find. Maintain cover. Trust the process. Maya deleted the messages and began reviewing her cover story for gaps that might need addressing. The following days established a pattern of escalating harassment. Day 5. Maya's laptop disappeared from her room during dinner. She returned to find her door unlocked, her belongings rifled through, and her primary device gone. Campus security conducted a perfunctory search that turned up nothing. The laptop reappeared 2 days later in the lost and found its hard drive completely wiped. What Derek Chen didn't know was that everything important had been stored on secure servers in Virginia. The laptop had contained only decoy files, carefully designed to support her cover identity and provide false leads for anyone investigating her background. Day 6. Her social media accounts, dormant but maintained as part of her cover, were simultaneously hacked. Disturbing content was posted, messages were sent to contacts she didn't have, and within hours her online identity had been transformed into that of an unstable, potentially dangerous individual. Maya spent 4 hours regaining control and documenting every detail of the attack. The sophistication of the hack suggested resources far beyond typical teenage capability. Someone was providing Connor's crew with professional-grade tools. Day 7. The rumors started. They began in whispers and grew into a coordinated campaign. Stories about Maya's father researched and twisted into something ugly. Claims that Marcus Carter had been a drug dealer, that he'd died in a deal gone wrong, that his daughter had inherited his criminal tendencies. The lies spread through group chats and social media posts, each one designed to isolate her further and justify whatever came next. But the attack on her father's memory was a mistake. Marcus Carter had been a construction worker who died because his company cut corners on safety equipment. He had been a church deacon who volunteered at homeless shelters. He had been a man who worked 16-hour days so his daughter could have opportunities he never had. Maya documented the slander, adding it to the evidence file that grew thicker every day. And somewhere beneath her professional detachment, she allowed herself to feel the anger that would fuel her when the time came for justice. On day 8, The confrontation she'd been anticipating finally arrived. The cafeteria was packed during lunch period, every table filled with students arranged according to the invisible hierarchy that governed Prescott Academy. Maya had just sat down when Connor appeared with his full entourage moving through the crowd like royalty expecting peasants to part before them. "We need to talk," Connor announced loud enough for the entire room to hear. "About exactly what you're doing at this school." Maya set down her fork with careful deliberation. "I'm eating lunch, same as everyone else." "No, that's not what I mean." Connor slammed his hands down on her table, making the silverware jump. "Derek did some digging. Want to know what he found?" "I'm sure you're going to tell me. Your whole application is fake." Connor's voice rose, ensuring maximum audience for his accusation. "Perfect SAT scores, perfect grades, perfect recommendations. But no real history before 2 years ago. No social media, no photos, no digital presence at all. It's like you were manufactured in a lab, specifically to infiltrate this school." The cafeteria had gone silent. Students were watching, phones raised, waiting for the drama to unfold. "Some people value privacy," Maya said calmly. "Not everyone lives their life online." "Privacy is one thing. Being a ghost is another." Connor leaned in close, his face inches from hers. "Who are you really? Maya Carter. What are you hiding? And what are you really doing at Prescott Academy?" "I'm a scholarship student trying to get an education. That's all." "Liar." The word was sharp, accusatory. "I think you're something else entirely, and I think my father needs to know about it. Do you know who my father is?" Maya met his eyes with an expression that made him hesitate. "Senator Richard Hayes, Republican, Connecticut. Serves on the Education and Finance Committees. Very influential in Department of Education funding decisions. Very interested in maintaining the reputation of his alma mater. Very connected to several shell companies that have received questionable payments from educational foundations over the past 8 years. The color drained from Connor's face. "What did you say?" "I said I pay attention." Maya stood slowly, gathering her things with the methodical calm of someone who had just played a card they'd been holding in reserve. "You should try it sometime. You might learn something interesting about where your family's money really comes from." "You don't know anything." "Don't I?" Maya shouldered her bag, preparing to leave. "Ask your father about the scholarship fund, Connor. Ask him what happens to the money that's supposed to help students like me. Ask him about Sarah Chen and James Morrison and all the other scholarship students who were driven out before they could ask questions. And then ask yourself why he's so interested in making sure I don't stay long enough to find answers." She walked away, leaving Connor frozen in place as the implications of her words sank in. Madison touched his arm. "Connor." What was she talking about? Nothing. But his voice cracked on the word. "She doesn't know anything. She's bluffing." "Are you sure? Because you look—" "I said she doesn't know anything." Connor's shout echoed through the silent cafeteria, making everyone flinch. He stormed out, his crew trailing behind him with uncertain glances exchanged. Maya didn't look back, but she allowed herself a small smile as she exited. The seed had been planted. Now she just had to wait for it to grow. That night, Connor Hayes made a phone call that would set everything in motion. "Dad, we have a problem. The new scholarship girl, the black one, she knows something. She mentioned the fund, the shell companies. She knows about Sarah Chen." Senator Richard Hayes's response was immediate and cold. "How much does she know?" "I don't know. Enough to scare me." A long pause. When the senator spoke again, his voice carried the weight of decisions made in rooms where ordinary rules didn't apply. "I'll handle it. But Connor, listen to me carefully. Whatever you've been doing to these scholarship students, it ends now. No more harassment, no more games. Complete radio silence until I figure out who this girl really is and what she's after." "But Dad..." "Complete. Radio. Silence. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." The call ended, leaving Connor staring at his phone with a growing sense that things had spiraled beyond his control. What he didn't know was that his call had been intercepted, recorded, and transmitted to a secure facility where FBI analysts were already adding it to an evidence file 3 years in the making. Maya received the notification at 11:47 p.m. She read the transcript of the call twice, then composed a brief message. Target has contacted Senator Hayes directly. Father-son conspiracy communication confirmed. Recommend accelerated timeline. The response came within minutes. Agreed. Phase 2 authorized. Asset support deploying to region. Execute at your discretion. Maya deleted the messages and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling of her dorm room. Somewhere in Washington, her Aunt Catherine was mobilizing federal resources for an operation that would bring down one of Connecticut's most powerful political families. Somewhere in Hartford, her mother was finishing another double shift, unaware that her daughter was about to become the key witness in a case that would make national headlines. And somewhere in the main building of Prescott Academy, Connor Hayes was lying awake, haunted by the look in Maya Carter's eyes when she'd mentioned the scholarship fund. The look of someone who knew exactly what she was doing and was completely unafraid of the consequences. The next morning brought a change that Maya had anticipated, but found unsettling nonetheless. The harassment stopped completely. Connor and his crew didn't look at her, didn't speak to her, didn't acknowledge her existence in any way. They moved through the hallways like she was invisible, their eyes sliding past her as if she didn't exist. To an outside observer, it might have seemed like victory. Maya knew better. The silence meant they were planning something bigger, something that required coordination at levels above a high school bully's pay grade. Something designed to remove her from Prescott Academy so thoroughly that her presence would become nothing more than an uncomfortable memory. She used the reprieve to strengthen relationships with the other scholarship students. James was the easiest to approach. She found him in the library during free period, hunched over a physics textbook, with the desperate intensity of someone trying to prove he belonged. "Mind if I sit?" Maya asked. He looked up with startled eyes, checking over her shoulder as if expecting an ambush. "Are you sure you want to? Being seen with me isn't exactly a status boost around here. I'm a scholarship student too. I don't have status to lose." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Fair point." They studied together in silence for a while before James spoke again. "You're different than the others. The scholarship students who came before you, I mean. They all broke eventually. The harassment, the isolation, the constant reminder that we don't belong. It wears you down. But you seem like you're made of something harder. My mother taught me that the only power bullies have is the power you give them," Maya said. "She also taught me that keeping records of everything is the first step toward justice." James's eyes widened slightly. "You've been documenting what they do. Every incident. Dates, times, witnesses, evidence. I'm building a file that would make a prosecutor weep with joy." That's either brilliant or crazy. Maybe both. My mother always said there's a thin line between the two. Maya closed her textbook. "James, can I ask you something? Have you ever noticed anything strange about how Prescott handles scholarship students? Anything that seems like more than just rich kids being cruel?" James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "There was a girl last year, Destiny Williams. She was smarter than anyone I've ever met, including the kids whose parents donate buildings. She started asking questions about why the scholarship program kept losing students. Wanted to write an article for the school paper about retention rates. What happened to her? 3 weeks after she started asking questions, drugs were found in her locker. She was expelled the same day. Her family couldn't afford lawyers to fight it. Last I heard, she was working at a gas station in New Haven because no college would touch her with that on her record." Maya's jaw tightened. Another name for the file. Another life destroyed by the same machine that had nearly killed her cousin. Did anyone else notice the pattern? A few of us talked about it. But what could we do? We're scholarship kids. We have no power, no connections, no resources. The system is designed to crush us, and everyone who might help is either complicit or afraid. James looked at her with something that might have been hope. Why do you think you can actually do something about it? Maya considered her answer carefully. I think that systems designed to crush people eventually crush the wrong person. Someone who won't break. Someone who has more resources than they appear to. Someone who's been waiting for exactly this opportunity. That sounds like something from a movie. Sometimes, life is stranger than movies. Maya stood gathering her books. Keep documenting everything, James. Keep notes. And when things start happening, make sure you're somewhere safe with witnesses who can vouch for your location. What do you mean when things start happening? Maya just smiled and walked away, leaving James staring after her with a mixture of confusion and something that looked almost like faith. The quiet period lasted 3 more days. On the 4th day, Maya received an encrypted message that changed everything. Financial analysis complete. Scholarship fund fraud confirmed. Estimated $4.7 million diverted over 9 years through 17 shell companies. Primary beneficiaries: Senator Richard Hayes, Principal William Douglas, CFO, Margaret Wells, 3 board members. Secondary beneficiaries: 23 individuals, including law enforcement and judicial officials. This is bigger than we anticipated. Recommend maximum operational security. Backup teams deploying to region. Be ready for rapid extraction if cover is compromised. Maya read the message 3 times, her mind racing through the implications. $4.7 million stolen from students who had nothing. 17 shell companies designed to hide the theft. 23 accomplices, including people who were supposed to enforce the law and protect the vulnerable. This wasn't just a corrupt politician and his entitled son. This was a conspiracy that had captured an entire community's institutions. Police who would look the other way. Judges who would dismiss charges. Administrators who would fabricate evidence. A machine designed to protect the powerful and destroy anyone who threatened them. Sarah hadn't just been bullied. She had been systematically targeted by a criminal enterprise because she represented a threat to their profits. And now Maya understood why no one had ever successfully exposed the scheme before. The students who might have discovered the truth were driven out before they could ask questions. The few who stayed learned to keep their heads down and survive. The adults who might have helped were either complicit or afraid of consequences that could destroy their careers and families. But they had never faced someone like Maya. Someone who had been trained specifically to penetrate organizations like this. Someone who had federal resources backing her every move. Someone who had a very personal stake in burning the whole rotten system to the ground. She composed a careful response. Understood. Evidence gathering accelerating. Requesting authorization to expand target list based on new intelligence. Also requesting asset protection for scholarship student witnesses who may be valuable to prosecution. The reply came within hours. Authorization granted. Asset protection protocols initiated for identified witnesses. Proceed with caution. You are more valuable than any evidence you might gather. If cover is compromised, extract immediately. Your safety is the priority. Maya appreciated the concern, but she had no intention of extracting before she finished what she'd come to do. The break in Connor's radio silence came exactly when Maya expected it. She was walking back to her dorm after dinner when Blake Morrison stepped out of the shadows between buildings. He was alone, which was unusual, and his body language suggested violence barely contained. "We need to talk," he said. Maya stopped assessing escape routes while keeping her posture relaxed. "About what?" "About what you think you know." Blake moved closer, his bulk blocking the path back toward the main buildings. "Connor's been freaking out since you mentioned his dad's business. The senator called 3 times today. Something's got them all scared, and I want to know what it is." "Maybe they have guilty consciences." Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Conscience, that's funny. The Hayes family doesn't have consciences. They have lawyers and accountants and friends in useful places. They can make problems disappear. They've done it before. Like they made Sarah Chen disappear." Blake's face flickered with something that might have been shame before hardening back into hostility. Sarah was weak. She couldn't handle pressure. What happened to her was her own choice. Was it, or was she broken deliberately by people who saw her as a threat to their operation? What operation? What are you talking about? Maya studied him carefully. You really don't know, do you? You thought this was just about putting scholarship students in their place? Rich kids having fun at the expense of people who can't fight back. What else would it be? How much do the Hayes family pay you, Blake? Or is it your parents they pay? What's the going rate for being Connor's enforcer? Blake's face went pale. How do you know about that? I know a lot of things. I know your family's construction company has received 3 no-bid contracts from the state since you started at Prescott. I know your father's gambling debts mysteriously disappeared around the same time. I know you've been on the Hayes family payroll since your sophomore year, even if you didn't understand exactly what you were being paid for. You're lying. Ask your father about the contracts, Blake. Ask him where the money came from. And then ask yourself what happens to people who help cover up federal crimes when the investigation goes public. Blake stood frozen, his intimidation tactics completely forgotten in the face of revelations he hadn't been prepared for. Maya stepped around him. You're not a bad person, Blake. You're just someone who got used by people with more money and fewer morals. But the using is almost over. The only question now is which side you want to be on when everything falls apart. She walked away, leaving him standing in the shadows, with a choice that would determine the rest of his life. The next morning brought a visitor to Prescott Academy that made Principal Douglas visibly nervous. Maya was walking to first period when she saw the black SUV with federal plates parked in the visitor lot. Through the window of the administration building, she could see a woman in a dark business suit speaking with Principal Douglas in his office. Even from a distance, she recognized the body language of someone accustomed to authority. Agent Helen Foster, officially from the Department of Education, unofficially the FBI's lead coordinator for the Prescott operation, and Catherine Chen's most trusted colleague. Their eyes met briefly through the glass. Helen gave an almost imperceptible nod. The message was clear. Backup had arrived. Principal Douglas emerged from the meeting looking like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. He made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, each one making him more agitated than the last. By lunch, rumors were swirling through the student body about federal investigators on campus and administrators behaving strangely. Connor found Maya in the hallway between classes. His usual entourage was notably absent. What did you do? His voice was low and dangerous. Who was that woman in my father's office this morning? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games with me. Connor grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to leave bruises. My father called me an hour ago. He was scared. I've never heard him scared before. What did you tell them? Maya looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. I'd let go if I were you. Or what you'll call the feds. Connor laughed bitterly. They're already here, apparently. What more damage could you possibly do? Connor. Maya's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm going to give you one chance. 1. Let go of my arm, walk away and spend the next 48 hours being a model citizen. Don't make any calls. Don't destroy any evidence. Don't try to intimidate any witnesses. Just be quiet and wait. Why would I do that? Because what's coming can't be stopped. The only variable now is how bad it gets for you personally. Your father is going to prison. That's already decided. But you're 17. Juvenile records can be sealed. Cooperation can be rewarded. There's still a future for you if you're smart enough to take it. Connor's grip tightened. You're bluffing. You have to be. My father is a United States Senator. He has friends everywhere. He can make this go away like he's made everything else go away. He can't make this go away. Maya's voice carried absolute certainty. He's been trying for 3 days and failing. Why do you think he's scared? Why do you think Helen Foster is on campus right now? This isn't a state investigation that can be buried. This is federal. And federal means his friends can't help him. Federal means everything he's built is about to come crashing down. You're lying. Am I? Then why is your hand shaking? Connor looked down at his grip on her arm and realized she was right. He released her abruptly, stepping back as if burned. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No." Maya agreed. "It isn't. But when it ends, remember that I gave you a chance. Remember that I tried to help you, even after everything you did to me, and everyone who came before me. And remember that you chose not to take it." She walked away, leaving him standing alone in a hallway that suddenly seemed much larger and emptier than before. That afternoon, Connor made the worst decision of his life. Instead of heeding Maya's warning, he gathered his crew for one last operation. If he couldn't stop what was coming, he could at least make sure the person responsible suffered first. They found Maya in the science wing, gathering materials for a chemistry project. The hallway was empty, the classrooms closed for the day. "You should have stayed quiet," Connor said, Blake and Derek flanking him. "You should have kept your head down and survived like the rest of them. But you had to be different. You had to be a hero." Maya set down her books with careful deliberation. "This isn't going to end the way you think it is." "Maybe not, but it's going to feel good anyway." Connor nodded to Blake. "Hold her." Blake hesitated. The conversation from the night before had shaken something loose in him, doubt where there had been certainty. "Connor, maybe we should—" "I said hold her." Blake moved forward reluctantly. His hands reached for Maya's arms. What happened next would be discussed at Prescott Academy for years to come. Maya's response was so fast, so precisely executed, that most witnesses couldn't describe exactly what they saw. One moment Blake was reaching for her. The next moment he was on the ground, his arm bent at an angle that made Derek turn away, a sound escaping his lips that was half scream and half whimper. Connor lunged forward, rage overriding whatever caution he might have possessed. Maya redirected his momentum with a technique that used his own weight against him. He found himself flying through the air, rotating helplessly before crashing into a row of lockers with enough force to dent the metal. Derek backed away, hands raised. "I'm not part of this. I didn't touch her. I was just here. I didn't do anything." Maya turned to face him, her breathing slightly elevated, but otherwise showing no signs of exertion. "Then you won't mind waiting here until security arrives, will you?" "Derek?" He shook his head frantically. Maya pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "This is Agent Maya Carter. I need campus security and local law enforcement at the science wing immediately. 3 students have just committed assault. 1 requires medical attention." Connor, struggling to breathe after his impact with the lockers, stared at her with dawning horror. "Agent, did I forget to mention that?" Maya crouched down to his level, her voice conversational. "I'm not just a scholarship student, Connor. I haven't been for 3 years. Ever since your operation drove my cousin to slit her wrists in her bathtub, I've been training for exactly this moment. Sarah Chen was your cousin. She is my cousin. She survived no thanks to you, and she's going to testify at your father's trial about exactly what happened to her at this school. So is every other scholarship student you drove out. So is everyone your family paid to look the other way." Maya stood as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the hallway. "This is over, Connor. It's been over since the moment I walked through Prescott's gates. You just didn't know it yet." The first responders arrived to find Connor Hayes and Blake Morrison on the ground, Derek Chen with his hands raised in surrender, and Maya Carter standing calmly in the middle of it all. And in her hand, still recording, was a phone that had captured everything. The arrests began within the hour. Principal Douglas was taken into custody at 4:47 p.m., his face pale with shock as agents read him his rights in front of the student body. CFO Margaret Wells was arrested at her home at 5:23 p.m., federal agents carrying boxes of financial records from her home office. Senator Richard Hayes was arrested on the steps of the Capitol building at 6:15 p.m., the cameras capturing every moment of a powerful man's fall from grace. And at 7:00 p.m., as news vans gathered outside Prescott Academy and reporters shouted questions at anyone who would listen, Agent Helen Foster held a press conference that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. Today we have arrested 14 individuals in connection with a conspiracy to defraud the United States Department of Education, launder federal funds intended for educational opportunity, and systematically violate the civil rights of vulnerable students. This investigation began 3 years ago when a young woman named Sarah Chen nearly lost her life because of what these people did to her. It ends today with justice for Sarah and everyone else who was failed by the systems that should have protected them. In her dorm room, Maya Carter watched the press conference with her phone pressed to her ear. "You did good work," Catherine Chen's voice said. "I'm proud of you. Your mother is proud of you. And somewhere I think your father is proud of you too. It's not over yet. There are trials to come, testimony to give. A lot of people are going to try to make this go away. They'll fail. The evidence is too strong. You made sure of that." Maya was quiet for a moment. "Aunt Catherine." When Connor mentioned Sarah when he joked about her scars, I wanted to hurt him. Really hurt him. Not just defend myself, not just gather evidence. I wanted to make him feel what she felt. But you didn't. No, I didn't. That's the difference between us and them, Maya. We have the power to hurt people. Sometimes we even have the justification. But we choose not to use it except when absolutely necessary. We believe in the system even when the system fails us. We believe in justice even when justice is slow and imperfect. That's what makes us the good guys. Maya nodded slowly, even though her aunt couldn't see it. I want to be there when they sentence him. I want Sarah to be there too. I want him to see our faces and know that we survived, that he didn't break us. That can be arranged. Catherine's voice softened. Now get some sleep. You've earned it. And Maya, call your mother. She's been worried sick for 3 years, and she deserves to know her daughter is a hero. The call ended, and Maya sat alone in the silence of her room. Outside, the lights of Prescott Academy glittered in the darkness. Tomorrow, there would be chaos. News crews and lawyers and students demanding to know how this had happened under their noses. Parents would pull their children from a school tainted by scandal. Administrators would scramble to distance themselves from colleagues now wearing handcuffs. But tonight, there was only the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished and a promise kept. Maya picked up her phone and dialed her mother's number. "Mama, it's me. I have something to tell you." Gloria Carter answered on the third ring, her voice heavy with exhaustion from another double shift at St. Francis Hospital. "Baby, is everything okay? It's late." Maya pressed the phone tighter against her ear, feeling tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed for 3 years, finally threatening to fall. "Mama, I need to tell you something. About why I'm really at Prescott Academy." The silence on the other end stretched for a long moment. When Gloria spoke again, her voice had changed, sharpened with the intuition of a mother who had always sensed there was more to her daughter's sudden transformation 3 years ago. "I'm listening." Maya told her everything. About Sarah, about Aunt Catherine's investigation, about the training, the mission, the evidence she'd gathered, about Connor Hayes lying on the floor of the science wing and his father being arrested on the steps of the Capitol. Gloria was quiet for a long time after Maya finished. "You've been carrying this alone for 3 years, she finally said. "My baby girl carrying all of this weight, and I didn't even know. I wanted to tell you, Mama. Every Sunday when we talked, I wanted to tell you so badly. But Catherine said, I know what Catherine said. I know why you couldn't." Gloria's voice cracked. "But Maya, baby, promise me something. Promise me that when this is over, when all the trials and the testimony and the headlines are done, you'll come home. You'll let me hold you like I did when you were small. You'll let me be your mama again, instead of just a voice on the phone. I promise, Mama." And Maya, "Your daddy would be so proud of you right now. So proud. You hear me." The tears fell then silent and hot down Maya's cheeks. "I hear you, Mama. I love you. I love you too, baby. Now get some sleep. You've got more work to do tomorrow, and you're going to need your strength." The call ended, and Maya sat in the darkness of her room, letting herself feel everything she'd suppressed for so long. The fear, the anger, the grief for a childhood that had ended too soon, and a mission that had demanded everything she had. But beneath it all, there was something else. Something that felt like hope. 24 hours after the arrests, Prescott Academy had transformed into a war zone. News vans lined the circular driveway, their satellite dishes pointed at the sky like mechanical flowers. Reporters shouted questions at anyone who emerged from the buildings. Parents arrived in expensive cars to withdraw their children from a school suddenly tainted by scandal. And in the center of it all, students wandered in a daze trying to process how their world had shattered overnight. Maya moved through the chaos like a ghost, her status transformed from target to enigma. Students who had laughed at her humiliation now watched her with a mixture of fear and fascination. Teachers who had looked the other way during months of harassment couldn't meet her eyes. She found James in the library sitting alone at their usual table with a newspaper spread before him. The headline screamed in bold letters, "Senator Hayes arrested in scholarship fraud scheme." "Is it true?" James asked without looking up. "What they're saying about you, that you're some kind of undercover agent?" Maya sat across from him. "It's complicated. Try me." She considered her words carefully. 3 years ago, my cousin was a scholarship student here, Sarah Chen. The harassment she experienced broke something in her. She tried to end her life. After that, my family decided someone needed to find out what was really happening at Prescott. Someone who could gather evidence that couldn't be ignored or buried. And that someone was you. I volunteered. Sarah is my blood. What they did to her, what they've done to everyone who came before us, I couldn't let it continue. James was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he laughed, a sound that held no humor. "All those times I wondered how you stayed so calm. How you didn't break like the rest of us. I thought you were just stronger than everyone else. Turns out you were playing a completely different game. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth." "Don't be." James met her eyes for the first time. "You did what none of us could do. You fought back, and you won." He paused. "What happens now?" "Now comes the hard part. Trials. Testimony. Defense lawyers trying to discredit everyone who speaks against the Hayes family. It's going to get ugly before it gets better." "Will you need witnesses? People who can testify about what happened to scholarship students?" Maya studied him carefully. "It would help, but James, you need to understand what you'd be signing up for. The Hayes family still has money, still has connections. They'll come after anyone who testifies. They'll dig into your background, your family. Anything they can use to destroy your credibility. My mother cleans houses for rich families. My father drives a bus. We've got nothing to hide and nothing to lose." James straightened in his chair. "Tell me what you need me to do." The recruitment of witnesses began that afternoon. Sophia was harder to convince. Maya found her in the dining hall eating alone at a corner table with her eyes fixed on the exit. "I can't," Sophia whispered when Maya explained what she was asking. "My parents, they're not citizens yet. If I make trouble, if I draw attention to our family, they could be deported. Everything they sacrificed to give me this opportunity would be destroyed." "Sophia, look at me." Maya waited until the younger girl met her eyes. "The people who hurt you, who made you afraid to exist in your own school, they're going to prison. They can't hurt your family. And the evidence I've gathered doesn't require your testimony to convict them. I'm asking because your voice matters. Because what happened to you deserves to be heard. But if you can't do it, I understand. No one will force you." Sophia's hands trembled around her coffee cup. "You really think they're going to prison? Even the senator?" "I know they are. The federal prosecutors have everything they need. Financial records, recorded conversations, a paper trail that proves exactly where the stolen money went. This isn't a case that can be plea bargained away or buried by expensive lawyers. And if I testify, it will help other students. Future scholarship students who come after us. It will help make sure this never happens again. Not here. Not anywhere else the Hayes family has influence." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. My grandmother always said that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that something else is more important than fear. She took a deep breath. I'll do it. For the students who come after us. For my grandmother, who crossed a desert to give my mother a better life. I'll tell them everything. Maya squeezed her hand. Thank you, Sophia. You're braver than you know. The most difficult conversation came that evening. Deshaun Williams had survived 3 years at Prescott by becoming invisible. He had perfected the art of existing in spaces without being noticed, of moving through hallways without drawing attention, of suppressing every part of himself that might mark him as a target. Maya found him in the maintenance corridor behind the gymnasium, a hidden space where he ate his meals and studied in solitude. I know about your sister, Maya said without preamble. Destiny. She was expelled 2 years ago on fabricated drug charges after she started asking questions about the scholarship program. Deshaun's face went rigid. How do you know about that? Because her case is part of the federal investigation. Because the drugs that were planted in her locker were purchased by Derek Chen using a credit card linked to the Hayes Family Foundation. Because everything that happened to her was documented in files that Principal Douglas kept in a safe in his office. Files that are now in FBI custody. Destiny's life was destroyed. Deshaun's voice shook with suppressed rage. She had a full ride to Yale waiting for her. After the expulsion, they rescinded it. Now she works at a gas station and takes community college classes when she can afford them. Do you know what that did to our family? To our mother, who worked 3 jobs to give us chances she never had. I know. And I know that nothing can give Destiny back the future they stole from her. But Deshaun, the people who did this to her are going to face justice. And if Destiny is willing to testify, if she can tell her story to a jury, it will help make sure they never do this to anyone else. You want her to relive the worst thing that ever happened to her in front of cameras and lawyers and people who will try to tear her apart. I want her to have a choice. For 2 years, she's had no power over what happened to her. This gives her power back. This lets her stand up in front of the people who destroyed her dreams and say, I know what you did. And now everyone else will know too. Deshaun was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. I'll talk to her. I can't promise anything. The last 2 years have been hard on her, harder than you can imagine. But I'll tell her what you said. The choice will be hers. That's all I'm asking. Maya turned to leave, then paused. Deshaun, you've spent 3 years hiding, making yourself small so they wouldn't notice you. That took a kind of strength most people don't understand, but you don't have to hide anymore. None of us do. The next 72 hours brought chaos that tested even Maya's training. Defense attorneys for the accused descended on Prescott Academy like locusts, seeking anyone who might provide testimony favorable to their clients. Parents of wealthy students organized meetings demanding to know how their children had been exposed to federal investigators. Local politicians who had benefited from Hayes family donations scrambled to distance themselves from a scandal that grew larger by the hour. And in the middle of it all, Maya received a visit she hadn't anticipated. She was reviewing documents in her dorm room when the knock came. She opened the door to find Blake Morrison standing in the hallway, his arm in a cast from their confrontation 2 days earlier. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said quickly, reading the wariness in her eyes. I just need to talk, please. Maya studied him for a long moment, assessing threat levels and possible motivations. Finally, she stepped back and allowed him to enter. Blake stood awkwardly in the middle of her small room, looking nothing like the confident enforcer who had terrorized scholarship students for years. I didn't know, he said. About the money, about the fraud. I thought it was just I don't know rich kid stuff, putting people in their place. I didn't know we were covering up actual crimes. Would it have made a difference if you did? Blake flinched at the question. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. He ran his good hand through his hair. My father, he's been taking money from the Hayes family for years. I found out yesterday when the FBI showed up at our house with a warrant. They took his computer, his files, everything. He's probably going to prison too. I'm sorry. Maya meant it. Children shouldn't have to pay for their parents' sins. That's just it, though. I'm not innocent. I hurt people. I hurt you. I hurt Sarah Chen and Destiny Williams and everyone else Connor pointed me at. I told myself I was just following orders, just doing what I was told. But that's not an excuse. That's never been an excuse. Why are you telling me this? Blake met her eyes. Because I want to testify. Against Connor. Against his father. Against everyone who was part of this. I know it won't make up for what I did. Nothing can make up for that. But maybe it can help make sure no one else gets hurt. Maya was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words against everything she knew about him. The prosecutors will want to verify your sincerity. They'll investigate your background, your motivations, everything. If they think you're trying to cut a deal or minimize your own culpability, they'll reject your testimony. I'm not trying to cut a deal. I'll plead guilty to whatever charges they bring against me. I'll accept whatever punishment the court decides. I just want the chance to tell the truth, the whole truth, about everything I saw and everything I did. Why? Blake's voice broke. Because Sarah Chen was 16 years old. Because she had her whole life ahead of her. Because I helped destroy that and I have to live with it for the rest of my life. The least I can do is make sure the people who gave me orders face the same consequences I do. Maya walked to her desk and picked up a card. This is the number for the lead federal prosecutor. Call her tomorrow morning. Tell her exactly what you told me. She'll take it from there. Blake took the card with trembling hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove you mean what you say. That's all the thanks I need. After he left, Maya stood at her window watching his figure disappear across the darkened campus. People were capable of change, even people who had done terrible things. She had to believe that was true. Otherwise, what was any of this for? The weekend brought an unexpected development that shifted the entire trajectory of the investigation. Margaret Wells, the school's CFO, and one of the primary architects of the scholarship fraud, attempted suicide in her holding cell. She was rushed to the hospital and placed on 24-hour watch. When she stabilized 2 days later, she asked to speak with federal prosecutors. What she told them changed everything. The scholarship fraud wasn't an isolated scheme. It was part of a larger network of corruption that extended far beyond Prescott Academy and the Hayes family. For over a decade, wealthy donors across Connecticut had been using educational foundations as vehicles for money laundering, tax evasion, and political influence peddling. Senator Hayes was merely the most prominent member of a conspiracy that included state legislators, judges, law enforcement officials, and business leaders. Wells had kept records, detailed records, names, dates, transactions, communications, an insurance policy against the day when her partners might decide she knew too much. The FBI's investigation expanded overnight from a single school scandal to a statewide corruption probe that would eventually result in over 40 indictments. Maya learned about the expansion from Agent Helen Foster, who visited her dorm room with an update and a warning. "Margaret Wells has given us more than we ever expected," Helen said. "But it also means the people we're going after are more dangerous than we initially assessed. Some of them have connections to organized crime. Others have used their positions to compromise law enforcement officials who might otherwise have protected you." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we're moving you to a secure location until the initial wave of arrests is complete. Your role in this investigation is known. Your identity is known. And there are people out there who might decide that silencing you is worth the risk." Maya shook her head. "I'm not running. I started this. I'm going to see it through." "This isn't about courage, Maya. It's about tactics. You've gathered the evidence. You've built the case. The most valuable thing you can do now is stay alive to testify when the trials begin." "And what about the other scholarship students, James and Sophia and Deshaun's sister? What about everyone else who's agreed to come forward? Are you moving them to secure locations too?" Helen hesitated. "We don't have the resources to protect everyone. We're prioritizing based on threat assessment and evidentiary value. So they're on their own. They have local law enforcement protection. We've briefed the police departments in their areas. The same police departments that might include officers on the Hayes family payroll. Maya's voice hardened. The same officers Margaret Wells just identified as part of the conspiracy. Helen had no answer for that. Maya made her decision. I'm staying at Prescott until every witness I recruited is safely out of harm's way. You want me in protective custody, fine. But not until I know the people who trusted me are protected. Maya, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm being exactly as reasonable as my father would have been. He never left a job site until his whole crew was safe. He taught me that you don't abandon the people who depend on you no matter what it costs. I'm not going anywhere. The standoff lasted for 3 hours. In the end, Helen relented. Additional FBI resources were allocated to protect the witnesses Maya had identified. Security details were assigned to James Sophia and Deshawn's family. Destiny Williams was moved to a safe house where she could prepare her testimony without fear of retaliation. And Maya remained at Prescott Academy, a visible symbol of defiance against the forces that had tried to silence her. The first attempt came on a Tuesday night exactly 1 week after the initial arrests. Maya was walking back to her dorm after a late study session when she noticed the car. It was parked in a visitor space near the main gate, its engine running, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. She altered her route immediately, moving toward a more populated area, while activating the panic button concealed in her watch. The car began to move. Maya broke into a run, her training taking over as she calculated distances and escape routes. The library was closest, 50 yards, 30, 20. The car accelerated. She dove through the library doors just as the vehicle screeched to a halt behind her. Campus security was already responding to her panic signal, their lights visible across the quad. The car reversed and disappeared into the night. Maya stood in the library doorway, her heart pounding, watching the taillights fade into darkness. Around her, students, who had been studying, stared with wide eyes, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. She pulled out her phone and dialed Helen Foster's number. Someone just tried to run me down in the parking lot. Black sedan, tinted windows, no visible plates. Headed north on Academy Road. Are you hurt? No. But Helen, this means they're getting desperate. If they're willing to try something this open, this reckless, it means the people Wells identified are scared. Really scared. All the more reason to get you out of there. All the more reason to stay. They want me to run. They want me to disappear. If I do that, they win. They prove that the same tactics that worked on Sarah and Destiny still work. That fear still wins. Maya, this isn't a game. I know exactly what this is. It's a war, and I'm not retreating. The second attempt was more sophisticated. 3 days after the car incident, Maya received a message on her phone from a number she didn't recognize. The message contained a video file. She almost didn't open it. But something about the timestamp, the way it corresponded exactly to the time her mother's shift ended at St. Francis Hospital, made her blood run cold. The video showed Gloria Carter leaving work, walking to her car in the employee parking lot. It had been shot from a distance through what appeared to be a telephoto lens. The message beneath it was simple. Your mother is a long way from federal protection. Maya's hands shook as she forwarded the video to Helen Foster. Her voice when she called was steady, despite the terror coursing through her veins. They're targeting my mother. I need extraction for her immediately, tonight. Maya, calm down. We'll handle this. I am calm. I am completely calm. But if anything happens to my mother because of me, because of what I've done here, I will spend the rest of my life making sure everyone responsible pays. Do you understand me, everyone? Gloria Carter was moved to a secure location within 4 hours. FBI agents escorted her from St. Francis Hospital under cover of darkness, taking her to a safe house where she would remain until the immediate threat passed. Maya spoke to her mother by secure phone the next morning. Baby, what have you gotten yourself into? Gloria's voice was strained but steady. There are men with guns outside my door. They say I can't leave. They say someone threatened me. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to be part of this. Hush now. Don't you apologize for doing what's right. Your father never apologized for standing up to the bosses who cut corners on safety. I never apologized for reporting the doctor who was stealing drugs from the hospital. We don't apologize for courage in this family. But you're in danger because of me. I'm in danger because there are evil people in this world who hurt children for money. That's not your fault. That's their fault, and you're making sure they face justice for it. Gloria paused. Maya, baby, are you safe? Really safe. I have protection, good people looking out for me. That's not what I asked. I asked if you're safe. Maya closed her eyes. I'm as safe as I can be, Mama. And I promise you when this is over I'm coming home. We'll sit on the porch like we used to, and you'll make your cornbread, and we'll talk about everything I couldn't tell you for 3 years. I'm holding you to that promise. I know you are. The trials began 6 weeks later. Maya sat in the federal courthouse watching as Senator Richard Hayes was led into the room in handcuffs. The man who had once commanded the respect of presidents and power brokers now shuffled like a broken thing, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight during his time in custody. Connor was seated in the gallery, surrounded by lawyers and family members who had paid his bail. He looked older than his 17 years, his face drawn with the stress of watching everything he'd known crumble around him. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Maya expected to feel triumph, satisfaction, the vindication of 3 years of preparation and 2 weeks of hell. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Not sympathy, not forgiveness, but a strange sort of emptiness, as if the revenge she'd craved had turned to ash the moment it was within reach. Justice wasn't about making people suffer. It was about making sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. She held Connor's gaze for a long moment, then looked away. The prosecution began its opening statement, and Maya listened as 3 years of her life were reduced to evidence and testimony and legal arguments. The scholarship fraud, the money laundering, the systematic destruction of young lives for profit and power. When it was her turn to testify, she walked to the witness stand with the same calm she'd maintained throughout her time at Prescott. The defense attorney tried to break her, tried to paint her as a vigilante, a liar, a troubled young woman with a vendetta against wealthy families. He brought up her father's death, her mother's modest income, her cousin's suicide attempt. Maya answered every question with the same steady voice. She presented evidence that couldn't be disputed. She named names and dates and amounts with the precision of someone who had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. And when it was over, when the prosecutor had no more questions and the judge had dismissed her from the stand, Maya walked out of the courtroom and into a future that was finally her own. The verdicts came 3 months later. Senator Richard Hayes was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 24 years in federal prison. Principal William Douglas received 15 years. Margaret Wells, whose cooperation had been crucial to expanding the investigation, received 8 years with the possibility of early release. And Connor Hayes, tried as an adult for his role in the conspiracy, was sentenced to 5 years in a federal juvenile facility. Maya watched the sentencing from the back of the courtroom, Sarah Chen seated beside her. Her cousin had come to bear witness to see the faces of the people who had nearly destroyed her as they learned they would pay for what they'd done. When Connor's sentence was announced, Sarah squeezed Maya's hand. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of 3 years begin to lift from her shoulders. But even as she celebrated the victory, she knew that her work wasn't finished. Somewhere out there, other students were suffering in silence. Other conspiracies were grinding up young dreams for profit. Other bullies were learning that power meant never facing consequences. And somewhere another girl was being told she didn't belong, that she should know her place, that money and connections made some people untouchable. Maya Carter had proven that wasn't true, and she intended to keep proving it for as long as it took. 6 months after the sentencing, Maya Carter stood in front of Yale University's admissions building with her acceptance letter clutched in her hand. The irony wasn't lost on her. This was the same institution that had rescinded Destiny Williams' scholarship after the fabricated drug charges. Now Destiny was enrolled as a freshman. Her record expunged, her future restored. And Maya was about to begin her own journey at the school that had once been weaponized against the very students it should have welcomed. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Proud of you, cousin. Dad says dinner's at 7. Don't be late." Maya smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." She was about to put the phone away when another message arrived. This one from a number she didn't recognize. The words made her blood freeze. "You destroyed my family. Now I'm going to destroy yours. This isn't over, Maya. It's just beginning." The message was unsigned, but Maya knew exactly who had sent it. Connor Hayes had been released from juvenile detention 3 weeks early for good behavior. His lawyers had argued successfully that he posed no threat to society, that he had been reformed by his time in custody. Maya hadn't believed it then. She believed it even less now. She forwarded the message to Agent Helen Foster with a single question: "Is he being monitored?" The response came within minutes. "He's supposed to be. I'm checking now. Stay alert." Maya pocketed her phone and walked toward the admissions building. But the lightness she'd felt moments before had evaporated. 3 years of her life had been consumed by the Hayes family. She had hoped the sentencing would finally set her free. Now she understood that freedom wasn't something that came automatically. It had to be defended, again and again, for as long as necessary. The first sign that something was wrong came 2 weeks into her freshman year. Maya returned to her dorm room after a late study session to find her door slightly ajar. She hadn't left it that way. She never left it that way. 3 years of training had made certain habits unbreakable. She pushed the door open slowly, every sense on high alert. The room had been searched, carefully, professionally, by someone who knew what they were doing. Her belongings were all in their proper places, but the angles were wrong. The spacing was off. Small details that only someone with her training would notice. Her laptop was exactly where she'd left it. But when she opened it, she found a document on the desktop that she hadn't created. It was a photograph of her mother taken that morning outside the safe house where Gloria Carter now lived. The timestamp was visible in the corner. The message beneath was simple: "Federal protection doesn't last forever." Maya's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She dialed Helen Foster's number, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "They found my mother. Someone photographed her this morning at the safe house. They were in my room. They left me a message." Helen's response was immediate. "I'm dispatching a team to your location now. Don't leave your room. Don't talk to anyone." "Helen, who's doing this? Connor is being monitored. He can't have orchestrated something this sophisticated from under surveillance." A long pause. When Helen spoke again, her voice was grave. "Maya, there's something I need to tell you. Something we've been investigating for the past 3 months." "What is it?" "The Hayes family didn't operate alone. We always knew that. But what we've discovered goes deeper than we initially understood. Senator Hayes was connected to a network of wealthy families across the eastern seaboard. Families with the resources and motivation to continue what he started." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Connor Hayes might be a distraction. Someone for us to watch while the real threat operates in the shadows. The people who benefited from the scholarship fraud, the money laundering, the corruption networks. They didn't all get arrested. Some of them are still out there, and they blame you for bringing down their operation." Maya sat down heavily on her bed. "How many?" "At least a dozen families that we've identified, probably more that we haven't. They've been quiet since the trials, but there's been chatter recently. Communications we've intercepted that suggest they're planning something." "Planning what?" "We don't know yet, but Maya, I need you to understand the severity of the situation. These aren't desperate teenagers or panicked politicians. These are people with generational wealth and connections that span continents. If they've decided you're a threat that needs to be neutralized, they have the resources to make it happen." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications Maya was only beginning to understand. 3 years ago, she had volunteered for a mission to bring down a corrupt senator and his bullying son. She had prepared for harassment, intimidation, legal retaliation. She had not prepared for this. What do I do? She asked quietly. For now, you stay vigilant. We're increasing surveillance on known associates of the Hayes network. We're moving your mother to a new location tonight. And Maya, I'm assigning you a protective detail. 2 agents undercover who will be enrolled as students at Yale. They'll have eyes on you at all times. I don't need babysitters. This isn't about what you need. It's about what the situation requires. Helen's voice softened. You're not just a witness anymore, Maya. You're a symbol. The girl who brought down one of the most powerful families in Connecticut. There are people out there who want to make an example of you to prove that standing up to power has consequences. We can't let that happen. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of a destiny she had never asked for settling onto her shoulders. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I'll accept the protection, but Helen, promise me something. What? Promise me that when we find out who's behind this, I'll be there when we take them down, just like before. I've earned that. You've earned more than you know, Maya. And yes, when the time comes, you'll be there. The protective detail arrived the next morning. Agent Marcus Thompson was a tall black man in his late 20s who posed as a graduate student in criminal justice. Agent Lisa Chen, no relation to Maya's aunt, was a petite Asian American woman who enrolled as a junior in computer science. Together, they maintained a surveillance perimeter that would have been invisible to anyone not specifically looking for it. Maya found their presence both comforting and suffocating. For 3 years, she had operated as a lone agent, relying on her own skills and judgment. Having shadows who monitored her every movement reminded her that she was no longer the hunter. She was the hunted. The attacks began small. First, her financial aid was mysteriously flagged for review. She spent 2 weeks fighting bureaucratic obstacles that threatened to derail her enrollment. The investigation eventually cleared her, but not before she had missed critical registration deadlines and been forced to appeal for late enrollment in 3 of her classes. Then her academic records were compromised. Grades she had earned were changed without authorization. Papers she had submitted disappeared from university databases. Her professors received anonymous complaints alleging plagiarism and academic misconduct. Each incident was plausibly deniable. Each attack could be explained as a computer error, a clerical mistake, a misunderstanding, but the pattern was unmistakable. Someone was trying to destroy her the same way they had destroyed Destiny Williams. Death by 1,000 cuts, reputation murdered through accumulated suspicion, dreams strangled by manufactured obstacles. But Maya Carter was not Destiny Williams. She documented everything, built a case file that grew thicker by the day, traced the digital fingerprints of each attack back through layers of anonymization that would have defeated a less sophisticated investigator. And what she found made her blood run cold. The attacks weren't coming from Connor Hayes or his imprisoned father. They were being coordinated by a law firm in Manhattan, Reynolds Stark and Associates, a white shoe practice that represented some of the wealthiest families in America. When Maya brought her findings to Helen Foster, the agent went silent for a long moment. Reynolds Stark, Helen finally said. We've encountered them before. They specialize in making problems disappear for clients who can afford their services. But Maya, they're careful, very careful. Everything they do is technically legal. Hiring private investigators to dig into opponents' backgrounds. Coordinating media campaigns to shape public perception. Using their clients' influence to create obstacles for people they've targeted. So they can just keep attacking me and there's nothing we can do about it. I didn't say that. Helen's voice hardened. I said they're careful, but no one is perfect. And if they've been hired to target you, it means someone is paying them. Someone with deep pockets and a personal stake in seeing you destroyed. Find the client, and we find the source. Maya spent the next month conducting an investigation that would have made her FBI mentors proud. She followed the money. Reynolds Stark's billing records were sealed, but their partners' lifestyles were not. She tracked their spending patterns, their travel schedules, their social connections. She mapped the web of relationships that connected the firm to its wealthy clientele, and slowly, painstakingly, she began to identify the most likely candidates. There were three families whose financial and personal connections suggested the capability and motivation to target her. The Morrison family. Blake's parents, still wealthy despite the legal troubles that had followed their son's testimony. Blake himself had disappeared into witness protection, but his father had sworn revenge during his own trial for tax fraud. The Wells family. Margaret's husband and children, who had lost their social standing when she agreed to cooperate with federal investigators. Her eldest son had made public statements blaming Maya for his mother's imprisonment. And the Harrington family. This was the name that made Maya's heart skip a beat when it appeared in her research. The Harringtons were old-money Connecticut royalty whose ancestors had founded the state's first banks. They had no direct connection to the Prescott scandal, but their financial records showed substantial investments in the same shell companies that Senator Hayes had used for money laundering. More importantly, they had a daughter, Victoria Harrington, a junior at Yale who had been Connor Hayes's girlfriend before his arrest. Maya had never met Victoria during her time at Prescott. The girl had been studying abroad in France during Maya's operation, conveniently absent when everything fell apart. But according to Maya's research, Victoria had returned to the United States 3 months ago. She had enrolled at Yale, and she had joined the same sorority that Maya's roommate belonged to. The coincidence was too perfect to be anything but deliberate. Maya called Helen with her findings. Victoria Harrington. She's the connection, I'm sure of it. Maya, be careful. The Harringtons are not like the Hayes family. They're more careful, more patient, more connected. If you go after them without solid evidence, they'll bury you in lawsuits that will last longer than your lifetime. Then help me get solid evidence. A pause. What do you have in mind? The same thing that worked before. Someone needs to get close to Victoria. Someone she would never suspect. Someone who can gather evidence of her involvement in the campaign against me. Maya, you can't be that person. Your face was on every news channel in Connecticut. Victoria knows exactly who you are. I know, but I have someone in mind who might be able to help. The call came at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Sophia, it's Maya. I need to ask you for something. Something big. Sophia Rodriguez's voice was groggy with interrupted sleep. Maya, what's wrong? Are you okay? I'm okay, but I need help. The same kind of help I asked you for during the trials. Someone to gather evidence. Someone to get close to people who are trying to hurt me. Silence on the other end of the line. When Sophia spoke again, her voice was fully alert. Tell me everything. Maya explained the situation. The attacks on her academic standing. The law firm coordinating the campaign against her. Victoria Harrington, and her connection to the network that was trying to destroy her. You want me to befriend her, Sophia said when Maya finished. Get close to her. Find out what she's planning. I know it's a lot to ask. I know what I'm putting you at risk for. But Sophia, you're the only person I trust who could pull this off. You're at Yale. You're not connected to what happened at Prescott, and you've proven that you have the courage to stand up when it matters. Maya, I'm not trained for this. I'm not an FBI agent. I'm a college student who's trying to get a degree in nursing. I know. And if you say no, I'll understand. I'll find another way. But Sophia, these people destroyed lives. They destroyed my cousin. They destroyed Destiny Williams. And now they're trying to destroy me. If we don't stop them, they'll just keep doing it. To me, to you. To every scholarship student who dares to dream of something better. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Maya could hear her breathing, could almost feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her friend's shoulders. My grandmother always said that the measure of a person's character is what they do when no one is watching, Sophia finally said. She also said that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right, even when you're terrified. A deep breath. Tell me what I need to do. The operation began 3 days later. Sophia approached Victoria Harrington at a campus coffee shop, engineering a chance encounter that would seem completely natural to anyone watching. They bonded over shared complaints about difficult professors and unreasonable workloads. Victoria, starved for genuine connection after months of watching her social circle collapse around the Prescott scandal, welcomed Sophia's friendship with an eagerness that bordered on desperation. Within 2 weeks, Sophia had been invited to Victoria's inner circle. Within a month, she was attending private gatherings at the Harrington family's Connecticut estate, and what she found there exceeded even Maya's worst expectations. Victoria wasn't just targeting Maya out of revenge for Connor's imprisonment. She was part of a coordinated effort to rebuild the network that the Prescott investigation had destroyed. Wealthy families across the eastern seaboard were contributing to a fund designed to accomplish 3 objectives. First, discredit Maya Carter so thoroughly that her testimony in any future proceedings would be worthless. Second, create legal and political pressure to overturn the convictions of Senator Hayes and his co-conspirators. Third, establish new scholarship fraud schemes at private institutions across the country with improved security measures designed to prevent another exposure. The evidence Sophia gathered was explosive. Recorded conversations, financial documents, strategic planning materials that outlined the network's objectives in chilling detail. But gathering the evidence was only half the battle. 2 months into the operation, Victoria began to suspect that something was wrong. "You ask a lot of questions," she said to Sophia during a private conversation at her apartment. "About my family, about our friends, about what we're planning." Sophia kept her voice steady. "I'm just curious. You lead such an interesting life." "Curious?" Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Or something else?" "What else would it be?" Victoria stood and walked to her window, her back to Sophia. "You know, after what happened to Connor, I learned to be careful about who I trust. Everyone at Prescott thought Maya Carter was just another scholarship student. No one suspected she was gathering evidence against us until it was too late." Sophia's heart hammered in her chest. "That must have been terrible." "It was. Connor loved her, you know. In his own way. He thought he was just putting her in her place, teaching her how things worked at Prescott. He never imagined she was working to destroy him the whole time." "People aren't always what they seem." "No." Victoria turned to face Sophia, her expression unreadable. "They're not." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken accusations. Then Victoria smiled. "Anyway, enough about ancient history. Let's talk about the charity gala next weekend. I'm thinking we should coordinate our outfits." Sophia exhaled slowly, willing her racing heart to calm. "That sounds lovely." But as she left Victoria's apartment that evening, she knew her time was running out. The woman suspected something. It was only a matter of time before she started digging into Sophia's background, looking for connections that would reveal the truth. Maya received Sophia's warning message at midnight. "Cover may be compromised. Requesting guidance." Maya stared at the phone, weighing options that seemed to narrow by the second. They had gathered enough evidence to prove the existence of the network, but not enough to ensure convictions. If Sophia was exposed now, the operation would collapse. Victoria and her allies would disappear behind walls of lawyers and money, and the chance to bring them down might never come again. But if Maya let Sophia continue and Victoria's suspicions proved correct, her friend could be in serious danger. She made a decision that would define the next chapter of her life. Maintain position, accelerate evidence gathering. We move in 72 hours, regardless of what we have. The response came immediately. Understood. Maya put down the phone and began making calls. To Helen Foster, to her Aunt Catherine, to James and Deshawn and everyone else who had stood with her during the Prescott operation. The network thought they could rebuild what Maya had destroyed. They thought money and connections made them untouchable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The raid was scheduled for Saturday evening during the Harrington family's annual charity gala. Every major figure in the network would be in attendance. Victoria had invited Sophia personally, unaware that her new friend had spent the past month documenting every conversation, every document, every piece of evidence that would bring the conspiracy crashing down. Maya watched from a surveillance van parked 2 blocks from the Harrington estate. Helen Foster sat beside her coordinating teams of FBI agents positioned throughout the property. Nervous, Helen asked. Terrified, Maya admitted. Sophia is in there alone. If anything goes wrong, if they figure out what's happening before our teams move in, she knows the risks. She accepted them, just like you did 3 years ago. That doesn't make it easier. No, it doesn't. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Sophia, 2 words that made her heart stop. They know. Everything happened at once. Inside the gala, Victoria Harrington had cornered Sophia near the back of the ballroom. 2 large men in dark suits flanked her, their expressions making their intentions clear. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Victoria's voice was cold. Did you think I wouldn't recognize the same tactics that destroyed Connor, the false friendship, the careful questions, the patient gathering of evidence? Sophia stood her ground, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Then why did my investigator find records showing you visited Maya Carter's dorm room 6 times in the past month? Why did he find encrypted communications between you and FBI agent Helen Foster? Why did he find evidence that you've been wearing a wire for the past 3 weeks? The silence stretched between them. Sophia knew there was no point in maintaining the pretense any longer. Because you people destroyed lives, she said quietly. Because you drove my friend to attempt suicide. Because you stole futures from students who had nothing except their dreams. And because someone had to stop you. Victoria laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. Stop us. You've accomplished nothing. We'll destroy whatever evidence you've gathered. We'll bury you in lawsuits that will consume the rest of your life, and your friend Maya. By the time we're done with her, she'll wish she'd never heard of Prescott Academy. I don't think so. The voice came from behind Victoria. She spun to find Maya Carter standing in the doorway of the ballroom flanked by agents in FBI windbreakers. Victoria Harrington. Maya said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. You're under arrest for conspiracy, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Victoria's face went white. This is impossible. You can't do this. Your family will hire expensive lawyers and fight the charges for years, Maya interrupted. Just like the Hayes family did. And just like the Hayes family, they'll lose. Because the evidence Sophia gathered doesn't just prove your involvement in the campaign against me. It proves your network's plans to rebuild everything we destroyed. Every scheme, every target, every stolen dollar from students who trusted the system to protect them. The agents moved forward, handcuffs ready. Victoria locked eyes with Maya, her expression shifting from shock to pure hatred. This isn't over, she said as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. You've made enemies tonight that you can't imagine. People with resources and patience and very long memories. Maya stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Victoria could hear. Good. Let them come. I'll be waiting. The arrests continued through the night. 17 individuals were taken into custody from the gala, including 6 heads of families that had contributed to the network. Simultaneous raids across 5 states captured another 23 conspirators, along with evidence of scholarship fraud schemes at 12 private institutions. The scope of the conspiracy exceeded anything Maya had anticipated. What had begun as a single corrupt senator and his bullying son had grown into a network spanning the entire eastern seaboard, with tendrils reaching into government finance and education at every level. But tonight, that network had been broken. Maya found Sophia sitting alone on the steps of the Harrington estate, her face pale with exhaustion and the aftermath of adrenaline. You did it, Maya said, sitting down beside her. We did it. Sophia's voice was barely above a whisper. When Victoria cornered me, when those men blocked the exits, I thought it was over. I thought I'd failed. You didn't fail. You held your ground until we could get to you. That took courage, Sophia. Real courage. It took terror. I've never been so scared in my life. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that something is more important than fear. Maya put her arm around Sophia's shoulders. My grandmother used to say that. I think she would have liked you." Sophia leaned into the embrace, allowing herself to feel safe for the first time in months. What happens now? Now comes the hard part. Trials, testimony, years of legal battles against people with unlimited resources and very good lawyers. Maya paused. But Sophia, we've won something tonight that can't be taken away. We've proven that no amount of money or power can protect people who hurt the vulnerable. We've proven that the system can work even when it's stacked against us. Do you think it's over? Really over? Maya looked out at the flashing lights of police cars and FBI vehicles, at the wealthy conspirators being led away in handcuffs, at the evidence teams carrying boxes of documents that would fuel prosecutions for years to come. "I don't know," she said honestly. "People like this don't give up easily. They'll regroup, reorganize, find new ways to hurt people for profit." She turned to face Sophia. "But neither do we. And as long as they keep trying, we'll keep fighting. As long as there are students who need protecting, we'll be there." That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also important. Maybe the most important thing I'll ever do. They sat together in silence as the night stretched toward dawn, two young women who had survived impossible odds and emerged stronger than before. Behind them, the old order crumbled. Ahead of them, an uncertain future waited. But for the first time in a very long time, Maya Carter felt something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The dawn after the Harrington raid found Maya Carter sitting alone in an FBI conference room, staring at a photograph that had been recovered from Victoria's personal safe. The image showed Connor Hayes standing beside an older man Maya didn't recognize. They were shaking hands in front of a building that looked like a private club. The timestamp in the corner read, 3 months ago. Connor was supposed to be in federal custody 3 months ago. Maya's blood ran cold as she processed the implications. Either the photograph was fabricated, or Connor Hayes had been released from juvenile detention far earlier than anyone had been told. And if he had been released early, it meant someone with significant power had arranged it. She called Helen Foster immediately. "The photograph from Victoria's safe. The one with Connor. I need you to verify when it was taken." Helen's voice was grave. "We're already working on it. Maya, there's something you need to know. We checked the detention facility records this morning. Connor Hayes was transferred to a minimum security program 8 months ago. He's been essentially free for the past half-year." "That's impossible. We would have been notified. The victims' families have a right to know when their attackers are released." The notification was sent to an address that doesn't exist. Someone in the system changed the contact information for every victim associated with the case. By the time the paperwork reached the real addresses, Connor had been out for months. Maya's hands trembled. 8 months. Connor had been free for 8 months while she believed he was safely locked away. Every threat she'd received, every attack on her academic standing, every attempt to intimidate her into silence. He could have been behind all of it. Where is he now? We don't know. His last known address was a family property in Greenwich. When agents arrived this morning, it was empty. He's in the wind, Maya. The words hit her like a physical blow. 3 years of her life devoted to bringing down the Hayes family. Months of trials and testimony and legal battles. All of it leading to convictions that were supposed to protect her and everyone else Connor had harmed. And now he was free. Invisible. Dangerous. I want to see the case files, Maya said, her voice hardening into something cold and determined. Everything you have on his release. His activities, his connections. Someone helped him disappear. I'm going to find out who. Helen hesitated. Maya, you're not an agent anymore. You're a civilian now. A college student. You can't just... I became a civilian because the mission was supposed to be over. Because the bad guys were supposed to be in prison. That's clearly not the case anymore. Maya stood pacing the small conference room. Helen, he threatened my mother. He coordinated attacks against my education, my reputation, my future. And now he's free, and I don't know where he is. Do you really expect me to sit in a dorm room and wait for him to make his next move? The silence stretched between them. I'll have the files sent to your secure terminal, Helen finally said. But Maya promised me something. If you find anything, you bring it to us. You don't go after him alone. Connor Hayes isn't the same scared teenager who got arrested 3 years ago. Prison changes people, and not always for the better. I understand. Do you? Because the last time you went undercover, you were prepared for teenage bullies and corrupt administrators. This is different. This is someone who has spent years planning revenge. Someone who has nothing left to lose. Maya closed her eyes, remembering the look on Connor's face when he'd been sentenced. The cold fury in his eyes as he'd stared at her across the courtroom. The promise of retribution that had needed no words. I know exactly what he is, she said quietly. That's why I have to stop him. The investigation consumed the next 3 weeks of Maya's life. She attended classes during the day, maintaining the appearance of a normal college student while spending every night poring over case files, financial records, and surveillance reports. Agent Thompson and Agent Chen maintained their protective detail, but Maya barely noticed them anymore. Her entire focus had narrowed to a single objective: find Connor Hayes. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Blake Morrison, still in witness protection, reached out through a secure channel that Maya had established during the original trials. I heard you're looking for Connor. Maya's pulse quickened. You know where he is. No. But I know someone who might. After everything fell apart, Connor's mother went into hiding. Divorced the senator, took back her maiden name, moved somewhere nobody would think to look for her. She and Connor were always close. If anyone knows where he's hiding, it's her. Why are you telling me this? Blake was quiet for a moment. Because I've spent the last 2 years trying to make up for what I did, testifying against the people who gave me orders, cooperating with every investigation. But it's not enough. It's never going to be enough. His voice cracked. Connor is dangerous, Maya. More dangerous than he was before. Prison didn't rehabilitate him. It hardened him. Made him smarter, more patient, more focused on revenge. If he gets to you before you get to him, he won't. You don't know that. You don't know what he's become. Then tell me. Tell me everything you know about what happened to him inside. Blake's account painted a picture that chilled Maya to the bone. Connor had entered juvenile detention as a spoiled teenager who believed his family's money would eventually buy his freedom. The first few months had been brutal. Other inmates, many from backgrounds he would have looked down on at Prescott, had made his life hell. The guards, aware of his family's fall from grace, had offered no protection. But Connor had adapted. He had studied the power structures of incarceration, the same way he had once studied the social hierarchies of prep school. He had allied himself with inmates who had useful skills. He had cultivated relationships with guards whose loyalty could be purchased. And he had spent every spare moment educating himself on subjects that had nothing to do with rehabilitation. Computer hacking, surveillance techniques, financial manipulation. The tools of modern warfare against individuals who couldn't be attacked directly. By the time of his early release, Connor Hayes had transformed from a bully into something far more dangerous. A patient, calculating predator who had learned that violence was only one tool among many for destroying enemies. He talked about you constantly, Blake said. In the coded messages we exchanged before I cut off contact, he called you his unfinished business, said he was going to take everything from you the way you took everything from him. He took things from himself. He made choices that had consequences. I know that. You know that. But in Connor's mind, you're the villain of his story. The outsider who destroyed his family, his future, his entire world. He spent 2 years turning that narrative into an obsession. Maya absorbed the information, fitting it into the profile she was building of her enemy. His mother. What's her maiden name? Elizabeth Crawford. Last I heard, she was living somewhere in rural Vermont. That's all I know. It's enough. Thank you, Blake. Maya. Blake's voice was hesitant. Be careful. Connor isn't the same person you defeated at Prescott. He's evolved, and evolution isn't always a good thing. The connection ended, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts and a new lead to pursue. Elizabeth Crawford proved difficult to locate. She had covered her tracks with a sophistication that suggested professional help. New identity documents, altered financial records, a digital footprint so carefully managed that most investigators would have given up after the first few dead ends. But Maya wasn't most investigators. She traced Elizabeth through a weakness that the woman's advisors hadn't anticipated. Her prescription medications. Elizabeth Crawford suffered from a chronic condition that required specialized treatment. Treatment that could only be obtained from certain pharmacies with specific certifications. Maya cross-referenced those pharmacies with rural Vermont communities that matched Elizabeth's profile. Wealthy enough to support her lifestyle, but isolated enough to avoid attention. Within a week, she had narrowed the search to 3 possible locations. She shared her findings with Helen Foster. "I think I've found her. Elizabeth Crawford Connor's mother. She's living under the name Elizabeth Mitchell in a small town called Hartfield, Vermont. Maya, we've discussed this. If you've found her, you need to let us handle it." "I know. But Helen, I need to be there when you approach her. Connor threatened my mother. He spent 2 years planning to destroy my life. I need to look this woman in the eye and ask her where her son is." "That's not how federal investigations work. I'm not asking to conduct the investigation. I'm asking to be present, as a victim, as someone who has the right to face the people who've been targeting her." Helen sighed heavily. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "No." Another long pause. "Fine. We'll approach Elizabeth Crawford tomorrow morning. You can be there, but you stay in the background. You don't speak unless I authorize it. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get out immediately. Understood?" "Understood." The drive to Hartfield took 4 hours. Maya sat in the back of an FBI vehicle flanked by agents Thompson and Chen, watching the Connecticut suburbs give way to Massachusetts farmland, and eventually the forested hills of Vermont. The landscape was beautiful, but she barely noticed. Her mind was focused entirely on the confrontation ahead. Elizabeth Crawford, the woman who had raised Connor Hayes, who had watched her son become a bully and done nothing, who had fled when the consequences finally caught up with her family. What would Maya say to her? What could she say that would make any difference? The vehicle pulled into Hartfield just after noon. It was exactly the kind of town Maya had expected. Quaint storefronts, friendly neighbors who knew each other's business, the perfect place to hide from a world that had turned hostile. Elizabeth's house was at the end of a long private drive set back from the road and surrounded by trees that provided natural surveillance cover. The FBI team approached with practiced caution, spreading out to cover potential exit routes, while Helen Foster knocked on the front door. The woman who answered looked nothing like the society wife Maya had seen in photographs from the Hayes family's glory days. Elizabeth Crawford had aged dramatically in the years since her husband's arrest. Her hair was gray now, her face lined with the weight of public disgrace and private grief. "Mrs. Crawford." Helen held up her badge. "I'm Agent Helen Foster with the FBI. We need to speak with you about your son." Elizabeth's face went pale. "I don't know where Connor is. I haven't seen him in months." "Ma'am, we have evidence that suggests otherwise. May we come in?" For a moment, Maya thought Elizabeth would refuse, would slam the door and force the agents to obtain a warrant, would buy time for whatever plan Connor had set in motion. Instead, she stepped aside and gestured them into the house. "I've been expecting you," she said quietly, "ever since I heard about the Harrington arrests. I knew it was only a matter of time." The interior of the house was modest by Hayes family standards, but comfortable. Elizabeth led them to a sitting room and lowered herself into a chair with the weariness of someone who had been carrying an impossible burden for far too long. "Connor contacted me 3 weeks ago," she said without prompting. "He told me he was planning something that would finally settle the score with the people who destroyed our family." "What exactly did he tell you?" "Not details. Connor learned a long time ago not to share details with anyone he couldn't completely trust." Elizabeth's eyes found Maya standing in the background as instructed. "You're her. The girl who brought down my husband. The one Connor blames for everything." Maya stepped forward, ignoring Helen's warning glance. Your son terrorized innocent students for years. He helped cover up a fraud that stole millions from children who had nothing. Everything that happened to your family was a consequence of choices your family made. I know. Elizabeth's voice cracked. Don't you think I know that I watched my son become a monster and I did nothing? I told myself he was just being a teenager, just being a haze. I made excuses for behavior that should have horrified me because it was easier than confronting the truth. The truth being what? That my husband was a criminal, that my son was following in his footsteps, that our entire life was built on the suffering of people we considered beneath us. Tears streamed down Elizabeth's face. When Connor was arrested when Richard went to prison, I thought maybe it was a chance to start over, to raise my son differently. But it was too late. The damage was done. Where is he now? Elizabeth shook her head. I don't know. I'm telling you the truth. He called me from a blocked number, said he was planning something big, said I should stay out of it if I knew what was good for me. Did he threaten you? Not directly, but I know my son. I know what he's capable of. Elizabeth looked directly at Maya. He's going to try to hurt you. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I know that's what he's planning. Everything he's done since he got out has been building toward that. I can protect myself. Can you? Elizabeth's voice held genuine concern. Connor isn't the same boy you faced at Prescott. Prison changed him, made him harder, smarter, more dangerous. He's not going to confront you directly. He's not going to give you a chance to fight back. He's going to strike from the shadows at the people you love, at the things you care about, until you have nothing left. The words hung in the air, chilling in their certainty. Maya thought of her mother hidden in a safe house, but never completely safe. Of James and Sophia and Deshawn, whose courage had helped bring down the conspiracy. Of Sarah still recovering from wounds that would never fully heal. All of them potential targets. All of them vulnerable. Help us find him, Maya said. Help us stop him before anyone else gets hurt. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. Connor sent me this last week. I don't know what's on it. I was too afraid to look. But if there's anything that can help you find him, it might be here. Helen took the drive with gloved hands. We'll need to analyze this at our facility. It could be trapped with malware. I understand. Do what you need to do. Elizabeth looked at Maya one last time. I'm sorry. For everything. For what my son did to those students. For what my husband did to your families. For all of it. I know apologies don't change anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Maya held her gaze for a long moment, searching for deception and finding only exhausted remorse. Apologies matter, she finally said, but actions matter more. If you remember anything else, anything that could help us find Connor, contact Agent Foster immediately. I will. They left Elizabeth Crawford's house with more questions than answers, but also with a lead that might finally bring Connor Hayes out of hiding. The flash drive's contents were analyzed at an FBI cyber facility in Boston. What the technicians found exceeded everyone's worst fears. Connor had been busy during his months of freedom. The drive contained detailed surveillance files on dozens of individuals connected to Maya's network. Photographs, schedules, home addresses, workplace routines, everything a predator would need to plan attacks against his prey. But the most disturbing discovery was a document titled The Reckoning. It was a manifesto of sorts, 30 pages of carefully reasoned arguments explaining why Maya Carter needed to be destroyed, why everyone who had helped her from the FBI agents to the scholarship students who had testified deserved to suffer, why the Hayes family's downfall was an injustice that demanded retribution. The language was chilling in its calmness. There was no ranting, no wild accusations, no evidence of the irrational rage that might make Connor's plans easier to predict. Instead, it read like a business proposal. Methodical, logical, completely insane. He's going to target them all, Maya said, staring at the list of names on the screen. everyone who testified, everyone who helped. He's going to systematically destroy every person I care about." Helen nodded grimly. "We're implementing protective measures immediately. Every name on this list will have surveillance within 24 hours. That's not enough. Connor's had months to plan this. He knows we'll try to protect these people. He's already anticipated our response." "Then what do you suggest?" Maya's mind raced through possibilities, discarding options that wouldn't work, focusing on the one approach that might succeed. "We need to draw him out. Give him a target he can't resist. Something that will make him abandon his careful planning and act impulsively." "What kind of target?" "Me." Maya's voice was steady, despite the fear churning in her stomach. "We announce that I'm giving a major speech at a public event. Something he can't ignore. Something that will force him to act before he's ready." "Absolutely not. We're not using you as bait." "Helen, he's going to come for me eventually. The question is whether it happens on his terms or ours. Right now, he has all the advantages. He knows where I am. He knows my routines. He can strike whenever he wants. But if we control the location, the timing, the circumstances, we have a chance to catch him. The risk is too high. The risk is already high. It's been high since the moment I agreed to go undercover at Prescott. I didn't back down then, and I'm not backing down now." The argument continued for hours. In the end, Maya won. The event was scheduled for 3 weeks later. A symposium on educational reform at Columbia University, where Maya would deliver the keynote address about her experiences exposing corruption in elite private schools. The venue was chosen for its security advantages, multiple access points that could be monitored, a speaker's platform with bulletproof protection, an audience that would be screened and vetted before entry. Maya spent the weeks before the event preparing, not just her speech, but her mind. She reviewed combat techniques she hadn't practiced since Prescott. She studied Connor's psychology, looking for weaknesses that might be exploited. She prepared for every scenario her trained mind could imagine, and she said goodbye to the people she loved. Her mother was the hardest. "I don't understand why you have to do this," Gloria Carter said, her voice breaking over the secure phone line. "Let the FBI handle it. Let the professionals deal with him." "I am a professional mama. That's what 3 years of training made me." "You're my daughter, my baby girl. I already lost your father. I can't lose you too." "You won't lose me, I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of everything she was about to risk. "Mama, do you remember what Daddy used to say about standing up when it matters?" He said that a person who doesn't stand up for what's right is just taking up space in the world. Connor Hayes is going to keep hurting people until someone stops him. He's already planning attacks against James Sophia, everyone who helped me. If I don't do this, if I don't draw him out now, more people are going to suffer. People I care about. People I promised to protect. Gloria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with tears but steady with resolve. "Your father would be so proud of you. I want you to know that. Whatever happens, Marcus Carter's daughter grew up to be exactly the kind of person he always hoped you'd be." "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, baby. Now go do what you need to do. And Maya, make sure you come home when it's over." "I will. I promise." The day of the symposium arrived under gray skies that threatened rain. Maya stood backstage reviewing her notes one final time while FBI agents conducted final security sweeps of the venue. Agent Thompson stood beside her, his expression tense with the awareness of how much could go wrong in the next few hours. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "No," Maya admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." "That's either very brave or very stupid. My grandmother used to say there's a thin line between the two." Thompson almost smiled. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." She was. She also used to say that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Maya looked toward the stage where soon she would stand before an audience of educators, journalists, and policymakers. And somewhere out there, Connor Hayes was watching, waiting, planning. "It's time." Helen Foster's voice came through her earpiece. "The audience is seated. Security is in position. Whatever happens next, we're ready." Maya took a deep breath and walked toward the stage. The auditorium was packed. Over 1,000 people had come to hear her speak, drawn by the story of a scholarship student who had brought down one of Connecticut's most powerful families. Camera crews lined the back of the room, ready to broadcast her words to millions more. Maya reached the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. 3 years ago, she began. "I walked into Prescott Academy as a scholarship student from Hartford. I was supposed to feel grateful for the opportunity. I was supposed to keep my head down and accept my place in a system designed to benefit the wealthy at the expense of everyone else." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Instead, I did something different. I fought back. I gathered evidence of corruption that had been stealing from students like me for over a decade. I testified against people who believed their money made them untouchable. And together with other brave students who refused to be silenced, I helped bring down a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power." The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. "But the fight isn't over." Maya's eyes swept the auditorium, searching for any sign of the threat she knew was present. "There are people who want to silence me, who want to punish everyone who stood up against corruption. They believe that wealth and privilege should protect them from consequences. They believe that power gives them the right to destroy anyone who challenges them." Her voice hardened into something sharp and uncompromising. "They're wrong. And tonight, I'm going to prove it." The first shot came from somewhere in the back of the auditorium. Maya dove behind the bulletproof podium as chaos erupted around her. Screams filled the air. Security personnel shouted commands. The audience scrambled for exits. And through the chaos, Maya saw him. Connor Hayes, standing in the aisle with a gun in his hand. His face twisted with the hatred that had consumed him for 3 years. Their eyes met across the pandemonium. "You took everything from me!" Connor shouted, his voice barely audible over the screaming crowd. "My family, my future, my entire life. Now I'm going to take everything from you." He raised the weapon. Maya didn't flinch. "You took everything from yourself, Connor. Every choice you made, every student you terrorized, every dollar your family stole. That wasn't me. That was you. Shut up. You want to know why I'm not afraid? Because I've already won. Whatever happens next, whatever you do to me, the truth is out there. The evidence is in federal hands. The testimony has been given. You can't undo any of it. You can't bring back what you lost." Connor's hand trembled. For a moment, Maya thought she saw something human flicker in his eyes. Doubt, fear, the recognition that she was right. Then his face hardened again. "Maybe I can't undo it, but I can make sure you pay for it." He aimed. The FBI agents hit him from 3 directions simultaneously. Connor went down hard, the gun flying from his hand as trained professionals swarmed over him. He struggled, screaming obscenities, fighting against restraints that had been designed for exactly this purpose. Maya watched from behind the podium as handcuffs were secured around his wrists, as his rights were read, as the boy who had once terrorized Prescott Academy was finally truly defeated. Helen Foster appeared beside her. "Are you okay?" Maya nodded slowly. "I think so. Is anyone hurt?" "A few minor injuries from the panic. Nothing serious. The shot went into the ceiling." Helen looked at her with something like admiration. "You kept him talking, gave us time to get into position. I wasn't trying to stall him. I was telling him the truth. Sometimes the truth is the best weapon we have." They watched as Connor was dragged from the auditorium, still screaming threats that no one was listening to anymore. And for the first time in 3 years, Maya Carter felt the weight of her mission finally completely lift from her shoulders. The aftermath of Connor's arrest stretched through the night and into the following morning. Maya sat in a hospital room not as a patient, but as a witness. Agent Thompson had insisted she be checked for shock for injuries she might not have noticed in the adrenaline of the confrontation. The doctors found nothing wrong with her body, but they couldn't examine the parts of her that hurt most. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from James Sophia Deshawn, from journalists requesting interviews, from strangers who had watched the live stream of the symposium and wanted to tell her how brave she was. She ignored them all, except one. "Baby, I saw the news. Please tell me you're okay." Maya pressed the phone against her ear, letting her mother's voice wash over her like warm water. "I'm okay, Mama. It's over. Connor's in custody. Federal custody this time. He's not getting out again." Gloria Carter's breath caught in her throat. "I watched the whole thing. On the television. When that boy raised his gun when I thought he was going to—" Her voice broke completely. "I thought I was going to lose you." "You didn't lose me. I'm right here." "I know. I know." Gloria took a shuddering breath. "Maya, I need to see you. I need to hold you. Can you come home?" "Soon, Mama, I promise. There's still some things I need to take care of here. Statements to give, reports to file. But when it's done, I'm coming home. And I'm going to eat your cornbread and sit on the porch and tell you every single thing I couldn't tell you for 3 years. I'm holding you to that. I know you are." The trials that followed were anticlimactic compared to the drama of Connor's capture. The evidence was overwhelming. The manifesto, the surveillance files, the weapon recovered from the auditorium, the testimony of over a dozen witnesses who had watched him attempt to murder Maya Carter in front of 1,000 people. Connor's defense attorneys tried everything. Insanity plea, diminished capacity, claims that their client had been radicalized during his time in juvenile detention. Nothing stuck. The prosecution presented evidence of methodical planning that stretched back months, of rational, calculated decisions made by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts: attempted murder, conspiracy, weapons charges, violations of his parole and protective orders. The judge sentenced him to 45 years in federal prison, with no possibility of early release. Maya was present for the sentencing, seated in the front row of the gallery, with Sarah Chen on one side and Sofia Rodriguez on the other. When the judge announced the sentence, Connor turned to look at them. His face was different than she remembered, older, harder. The boy who had slammed her into the lockers at Prescott Academy was gone, replaced by something colder and more dangerous, but also something defeated. "This isn't justice," he said, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom. "This is persecution. Everything I did because you destroyed my family. You took everything from us." Maya stood slowly, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Your family destroyed itself, Connor. Every choice your father made, every student you terrorized, every dollar you stole from kids who had nothing. That wasn't my doing. That was yours." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I just made sure there were consequences." Connor's face twisted with rage, but the guards were already moving him toward the exit. His final words were lost in the shuffle of chains and the closing of doors. And then he was gone. Maya stood in the courtroom for a long moment after everyone else had filed out. Sarah squeezed her hand. "How do you feel?" "Empty," Maya admitted. "I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, something, but all I feel is tired." "That's normal." Sarah's voice was gentle with understanding. "When I testified against the people who hurt me, I expected closure. What I got was exhaustion. The battle was over, but I didn't know how to stop fighting." "How did you learn?" Sarah smiled softly. "I'm still learning, every day, but it gets easier. The nightmares fade, the hypervigilance softens. Eventually, you start to remember who you were before all of this, and then you start figuring out who you want to be now." Maya nodded slowly, absorbing the wisdom her cousin had earned through suffering. "I don't know who I am anymore," she confessed. "I've been Maya Carter, undercover operative, for so long. I don't remember how to be just Maya Carter, college student." "Then don't try to go back to who you were. Figure out who you want to become." Sarah put her arm around Maya's shoulders. "You have time now. For the first time in 3 years, you have time. The months that followed brought changes Maya hadn't anticipated. She returned to Yale, but everything felt different. The protective detail was gone now, replaced by the ordinary security of a college campus. The constant vigilance that had been her companion for years began to fade, leaving behind a strange emptiness that she didn't know how to fill. She threw herself into her studies, channeling the focus and determination that had served her during the mission into academic pursuits. Criminal justice, psychology, the mechanics of institutional corruption, and the systems designed to prevent it. Her professors noticed her intensity. Several suggested she consider law school. Others pointed toward careers in federal law enforcement. Everyone seemed to have opinions about what Maya Carter should do with the rest of her life. But Maya wasn't ready to decide. Not yet. For 3 years, every choice she'd made had been in service of the mission. Now, for the first time, she had the freedom to choose for herself. The weight of that freedom was almost as heavy as the mission had been. The breakthrough came during a visit to Hartford. Gloria Carter's house looked exactly as Maya remembered it. Small but immaculate. Filled with photographs of Marcus Carter and the family they'd built together. The smell of cornbread baking in the kitchen. "You look tired, baby," Gloria said, studying her daughter's face with the penetrating gaze of a mother who missed nothing. Not sleeping. Sleeping fine. Just thinking a lot. About what? Maya sat at the kitchen table, running her fingers over the worn wood that held so many memories. About what comes next. Everyone has expectations. The FBI wants me to join them full-time. Yale wants me to pursue academia. Journalists want me to write a book. Everyone has a plan for Maya Carter's future, except Maya Carter. Gloria poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from her daughter. "What do you want?" "I don't know. That's the problem." "Then maybe that's your answer." Maya looked up confused. "What do you mean?" "You've spent 3 years knowing exactly what you needed to do. Every day had a purpose. Every action served the mission. Now the mission is over and you're lost." Gloria reached across the table and took Maya's hands. "Baby, that's not a problem. That's an opportunity. You get to figure out who you are when you're not fighting. You get to discover what matters to you when the world isn't depending on you to save it." "What if I can't figure it out?" "Then you take your time. You try different things. You fail at some and succeed at others. You make mistakes and learn from them." Gloria smiled. "That's called being young. That's called being human. You didn't get to do much of either for the past 3 years. Now you do." Maya felt something loosen in her chest, something she hadn't realized she'd been holding tight. "Mama, I don't know how to be normal." "Who said anything about normal?" Gloria laughed. "Baby, you were never going to be normal. You were too much like your father for that. But you don't have to be an undercover agent to make a difference in the world. You just have to be yourself. The rest will follow." The words stayed with Maya long after she returned to Yale. She began to approach her life differently. Instead of planning every action, every outcome, every possible contingency, she allowed herself to explore. To take classes that interested her without worrying about career implications. To make friends without assessing them for potential threats. To exist in the world as a person rather than an operative. It wasn't easy. Old habits died hard. She still automatically mapped exits when entering new spaces. Still noticed surveillance cameras and blind spots. Still assessed strangers for signs of hostile intent. But slowly, gradually, she learned to let go. The first anniversary of Connor's arrest arrived on a cold February morning. Maya marked the occasion by visiting Sarah in Boston, where her cousin was now working as a counselor for at-risk youth. The scars on Sarah's wrists had faded, but not disappeared. The scars on her psyche were healing slowly through the work she did with young people who faced the same demons she had conquered. "A year," Sarah said, pouring tea in her small apartment. "Hard to believe it's been that long." "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago." "Both can be true." Sarah handed Maya a cup and settled into the chair across from her. "Have you decided what you're going to do after graduation?" "I think so." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I'm going to law school, civil rights law. I want to help people who don't have the resources to fight back against systems designed to crush them." Sarah's face lit up. "That's perfect. That's exactly right for you." "It won't be as dramatic as undercover operations. No car chases or midnight raids or confrontations with armed criminals." "Thank God for that," Sarah laughed. "Maya, dramatic isn't what the world needs. What the world needs is people who show up every day and do the hard, boring work of making things better. People who fight battles that don't make headlines, but change lives anyway." "Is that what you do with your kids?" "I try. Some days I feel like I'm making a difference. Other days, I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. But I keep showing up. That's all any of us can do." Maya nodded slowly. "I want to keep showing up too. Not as Maya Carter, FBI asset, just as Maya Carter. Person who gives a damn." "That's more than enough. That's everything." They sat together in comfortable silence, two survivors who had found their way through darkness to something that looked like peace. Graduation came on a perfect May afternoon. Maya walked across the stage to receive her diploma, aware of the faces watching her from the audience. Her mother, tears streaming down her cheeks, applauding, with hands that had worked double shifts for decades to give her daughter opportunities she'd never had. Aunt Catherine standing tall in her FBI badge, radiating pride in the niece who had exceeded every expectation. Sarah healthy and whole, surrounded by the life she'd rebuilt from ashes. And behind them, scattered through the crowd, the others. James, now a junior at MIT studying engineering. Sophia completing her nursing degree with honors. Deshawn working as a paralegal while attending law school at night. Destiny Williams, her record expunged her future, restored pursuing the education that had been stolen from her. All of them connected by what they'd survived. All of them moving forward into futures that had once seemed impossible. After the ceremony, they gathered at a restaurant Gloria had chosen for the celebration. The conversation flowed easily, mixing memories of hardship with hopes for what lay ahead. "To Maya," James raised his glass. "The girl who taught us that fighting back was possible." "To all of us," Maya corrected. "The people who proved that courage is stronger than cruelty." They drank to that. Later, after the others had gone, Maya sat alone with her mother on the restaurant's patio. The evening had cooled into something comfortable, and the city lights sparkled against the darkening sky. "Your father would have loved tonight," Gloria said quietly. "Seeing you graduate, seeing all those young people you helped, he would have been so proud. I wish he could have been here." "He was, in every lesson he taught you, in every choice you made, in the person you've become." Gloria took her daughter's hand. "Marcus Carter lives in you, Maya, in your courage, in your determination, in your refusal to accept injustice when you see it." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "I try to make him proud, every day." "You do. You always have." They sat together as the night deepened, mother and daughter, survivor and witness, connected by love that had endured everything the world had thrown at them. 3 months later, Maya began her first year of law school at Columbia. The campus was different from Yale, more urban, more diverse, more connected to the real struggles of people fighting against systems designed to keep them down. Maya found herself drawn to classmates who had similar backgrounds, who understood what it meant to be the first in their families to pursue higher education. She also found herself becoming a mentor. Word of her story had spread through communities that didn't make the evening news. Communities where children grew up poor but brilliant, where families sacrificed everything for opportunities that might never come, where young people faced bullies and corruption and obstacles that seemed insurmountable. They reached out to her, through social media, through mutual connections, through organizations that had heard about the scholarship student who brought down a senator. They wanted advice, guidance, hope. Maya gave them what she could. "The system isn't fair," she told a group of high school students visiting Columbia for a recruitment event. It's designed to benefit people who already have advantages, but that doesn't mean you can't succeed. It means you have to be smarter, work harder, and refuse to let anyone make you believe you don't belong. What if they try to stop us? A young girl asked. What if they do to us what they did to those students at Prescott? Document everything, Maya said. Build relationships with people who will stand with you. And remember that you're not alone. There are people out there who will fight for you. People who have been where you are and made it through. Find them. Connect with them. Let them help you the way others helped me. Did you ever want to give up? Maya considered the question carefully. Every day, when the harassment was at its worst, when it felt like everyone with power was aligned against me, when I couldn't see how things could ever get better, I wanted to quit, to run, to accept that some battles can't be won. Why didn't you? Because my father taught me that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Because my mother showed me that strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up every time you do. And because somewhere out there, other students were suffering the same things I was suffering. If I gave up, who would fight for them? The young girl's eyes shone with something Maya recognized, the spark of determination that no amount of adversity could extinguish. I want to be like you, she said. I want to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Maya smiled. You already are, you just don't know it yet. The years that followed brought cases and causes and battles that never made headlines but changed lives nonetheless. Maya graduated from law school and joined a civil rights organization dedicated to fighting educational discrimination. She represented families whose children had been pushed out of schools by administrators who saw them as problems rather than students. She challenged systems that perpetuated inequality while claiming to promote opportunity. She won some cases and lost others, but she never stopped fighting. Along the way, she built a family of her own. She married a man named David, a public defender from Chicago, who shared her passion for justice and her impatience with excuses. They had 2 children, a girl named Gloria, after Maya's mother, and a boy named Marcus, after the father she still missed every day. She told her children the story of Prescott Academy when they were old enough to understand. Not as a tale of adventure, but as a lesson about the price of silence and the power of speaking up. Were you scared? Little Gloria asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Terrified, Maya admitted. Every single day. Then why did you do it? Because some things are more important than fear. Because there were students who needed someone to fight for them. Because your grandfather taught me that we don't get to choose whether the world is fair. We only get to choose whether we accept the unfairness or fight against it. I want to fight against it, Gloria declared with the fierce certainty of a 7-year-old. I want to be brave like you. Maya pulled her daughter close. You already are, baby. You already are. The final chapter came 30 years after that first day at Prescott Academy. Maya stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., accepting an award for lifetime achievement in civil rights advocacy. The audience included senators and Supreme Court justices, activists, and educators, people whose lives had been shaped by the movement she had helped to build. But her eyes kept returning to the front row where her family sat watching. Gloria Carter, 90 years old now, but still sharp as ever, still wearing the same proud smile she'd worn at Maya's graduation decades ago. David, gray-haired but still passionate, still fighting battles in courtrooms across the country. Their children grown now with families of their own, carrying forward the legacy of courage that had begun with a construction worker named Marcus and continued through a girl who refused to be broken. And beside them, Sarah Chen. Survivor. Counselor. Living proof that darkness doesn't have to be permanent. 30 years ago. Maya began, her voice steady despite the emotions swelling in her chest. I was a 17-year-old scholarship student who walked into an elite private school with 2 suitcases and a dream. What I found there was a system designed to crush students like me. A conspiracy that had stolen millions from young people who had nothing except their intelligence and their determination. She paused, letting the memories wash over her. I could have accepted it. I could have kept my head down, survived, moved on with my life. That's what they expected. That's what they counted on. But I chose to fight back. Not because I was brave or special or different from any other student who faced those same obstacles, but because someone had to. Because the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Her eyes found her mother's in the audience. I didn't fight alone. I had family who believed in me, friends who stood with me, mentors who guided me, and eventually I had an army of survivors who refused to let their stories be silenced. She smiled. We proved something together, something that needed proving. We proved that wealth and power and privilege don't make people untouchable. We proved that systems designed to protect the powerful can be challenged and changed. We proved that one person standing up at the right moment can make a difference that echoes through generations. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. I stand here tonight not as a hero, but as a witness. A witness to what's possible when ordinary people refuse to accept injustice. A witness to the courage of students who testified against their tormentors. A witness to the resilience of families who rebuilt their lives after everything was taken from them. Maya's voice strengthened with conviction. And a witness to the truth that has guided my entire life. That bullies don't win. That power corrupts but doesn't protect. That the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice when people are willing to bend it. She stepped back from the podium. Her message delivered her story complete. The audience rose to their feet, applause thundering through the auditorium. But Maya wasn't looking at them. She was looking at her mother, who was crying, at her husband, who was beaming with pride, at her children and grandchildren who represented everything she had fought for and everything she hoped for in the future. Later that night, after the ceremony and the photographs and the congratulations, Maya sat alone on the balcony of her hotel room, looking out at the monuments that symbolize the nation's highest ideals. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sophia, now a nursing administrator in New York. Watched your speech, still fighting the good fight after all these years. So proud of you, Maya. Another message from James, a professor of engineering at MIT. You inspired me 30 years ago. You inspire me still. Thank you for everything. And one from Deshawn, a federal judge in Connecticut. Because of you, I believe in justice. Because of you, I fight for it every day. The ripples of what we did together are still spreading. They always will be. Maya read each message, feeling the connections that had sustained her through decades of struggle and triumph. The scholarship students who had become advocates. The survivors who had become leaders. The broken who had become whole. She thought about Connor Hayes, still in prison, still consumed by the hatred that had destroyed him. She thought about Senator Richard Hayes, who had died in custody without ever acknowledging the harm he'd caused. She thought about all the powerful people who had believed their money and influence made them immune to consequences. They had been wrong, every single one of them. And she thought about her father, Marcus Carter, who had died on a construction site when she was 12 years old, who had never lived to see what his daughter would become, who had planted seeds of courage and determination that had grown into a forest of change. I hope you're proud of me, Daddy, she whispered into the night. I hope you can see what we built, what we're still building. The wind carried her words away, but Maya knew they had been heard. She had entered Prescott Academy as a girl, with nothing except her intelligence and her dreams. She had emerged as a warrior who had helped to reshape the landscape of educational justice in America. And the fight continued. In courtrooms and classrooms. In communities that were still struggling against systems designed to keep them down. In the hearts of young people who heard her story and believed that they too could make a difference. Because the truth that Maya Carter had lived and proven and would carry with her until her final breath was simple, powerful, and unshakable. One person standing up at the right moment, refusing to be silenced, refusing to be broken, refusing to accept that the powerful are untouchable, can change everything. That was her legacy. That was her gift to the generations who would follow. And that truth would endure long after she was gone, lighting the way for every scholarship student, every underdog, every person who dared to believe that justice was worth fighting for. Because sometimes the underdogs win, sometimes the bullies fall, and sometimes a small black girl from Hartford, armed with nothing but courage and conviction, can bring an empire crashing down.